evening, my fellow Americans. This is your President Samuel Ronan speaking. Welcome to the stream. Today is Recap Thursdays. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, we stream weekly, Tuesday through Thursday, talking about American politics, foreign politics, and then a recap of them all on Thursday. So, if you're joining us again, thank you for joining us. We have a lot to cover. Again, we didn't get to stream Tuesday, so we will be covering a lot of the Epstein files that we did not get to cover, that we would have covered otherwise. And it's going to be rough. This whole thing has been rough. It's like literally every week gets worse than the one before it. And it just doesn't make sense how much more escalation we can truly deal with. How much more regression in society before enough is enough, but apparently we still haven't hit that critical mass. So we will jump into that. Hello, Anna. It looks like you beat Amanda, right? To the front. So, or no, Kayla. You beat Kayla. So hopefully Kayla joins us later on. And yeah, let's jump into it because there's a lot to cover and only 3 hours to do it with. Of course, we're going to start with Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report.
Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. President Trump's so-called border czar, Tom Homan, said Wednesday 700 federal agents will be leaving Minnesota. Homan cited what he called significant.
That's actually the first time hearing of this. So 700 ICE agents from the 3,000 that are there are going to be leaving, which means there's still 2,300, way too many in Minneapolis right now. But this does go to show that civil resistance, right? Civil uprising, protesting, refusing to give them a single second of peace, organized and sustained organization at that, does in fact pay off. Again, 700 are being recalled. There's still 2,300 to go. And I know Minneapolis isn't going to stop now while they're ahead. But that's the point, right? The more we push back, the more we sustain our protest, our resistance, right? Our big middle finger to Big Brother. The longer we organize and stay organized, the sooner, the faster, and the harder they have to appeal to us. And so this is nothing but a resounding victory for Minneapolis and the United States of America. Well done, brava. That is exactly what we need in every city and every state of our country. True, I'm not Amy Goodman, so, there is that. But it is funny with the quote, because she does open up every single one of her videos like that. And hello, Leia. Welcome to the stream as well.
Progress in forcing local officials to cooperate with the federal government's crackdown. Minnesota's Governor Tim Walz called the move a step in the right direction, but demanded a faster drawdown of federal immigration forces. Democratic lawmakers in Minnesota's House of Representatives called for a complete withdrawal, writing, quote, "There are still more than 2,000 ICE agents terrorizing Minnesota's communities every day. ICE out now," they wrote. ICE agents still far outnumber the Minneapolis Police Department. On Wednesday, Minnesota teachers' unions joined a pair of local school districts in a lawsuit to keep federal immigration agents off school property and away from bus stops. Some schools in the Twin Cities have seen up to half of all students remain home during ICE's crackdown. The lawsuit came just after 10-year-old Elizabeth Zuna Caisaguano walked free from an immigration jail in Dilley, Texas, alongside her mother, after they were seized by ICE nearly a month ago on their way to school in the Minneapolis suburb of Columbia Heights. She's reportedly experiencing flu-like symptoms and has broken out with hives.
And there's at least one detention center that is purposely spreading measles amongst all of the occupants, and it is a detention center with children. It might be this one, and I think it's the one that's in Texas. There's several in Texas, but the one that's specifically holding and detaining children is allowing measles to spread through it rampantly, and then it seems as though they're releasing these children back into society to plague more students and more people to then justify some sort of argument that immigrants are carriers of disease, which is the exact same shit the Nazis pulled against immigrants, dissenters, and the Jewish population. She looks like one of Leia's classmates. I mean, and that's the thing, right? Leia's the same exact age. This is the same exact age group. And then the fact that, you know, half the kids aren't going to school because, well, why would they? Their school might get attacked and invaded by a paramilitary domestic terror force, right? And that's true for all schools that have bilingual or immigrant communities in attendance, right? And it's not just the brown kids that aren't coming to school. It's any kids, right? Because the whole system, the whole circumstances is ludicrously traumatic. So we are literally invading and terrorizing our own communities, our own cities, traumatizing our children even further than what with active shooter drills and everything else under the sun. We're also, you know, giving this paramilitary force the opportunity to be present on school property, or at least not as much as we did before. Now schools are finally paying attention and pushing back en masse, and there is success occurring throughout the country as well. So again, sustained pressure is how we the people create effective change. And you know how much money that takes us? How much fundraising is required to do that? Zero, right? This is why we have the right to protest. That organization does not cost any money, and all it does is cost us our time and potentially our freedom, which, again, it should never threaten our freedom, but we live in a fascist society. But you get where I'm going with this. If people keep asking, what can we do to fight back if we can't fundraise or if we don't trust the people who are in office? Organize, resist, protest, strike. Those have been and always will remain the most effective tools for resistance. Granted, voting would be preferable, but then again, people have to trust that their vote counts. And then people actually have to run for office that are worth voting for. So if we can start rebuilding our communities and start elevating members of those communities into office, we can then rally behind them instead of whichever billionaire party tells us to vote for. That's why we have a shitty democracy, because we don't actually have representation, because we no longer have community to recognize who would actually represent us. And that is what we need to fix. So, back to the video.
Prompting fears over her health amidst an outbreak of measles at the Dilley ICE jail. The U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Minnesota has removed an attorney from her post after she told a judge, quote, "This job sucks," unquote. The attorney, Julie Lay, complained of a crushing workload due to the Trump administration's immigration crackdown and the government's refusal to comply with court orders. Her complaints came as the American Civil Liberties Union called on the United Nations to investigate the Trump's immigration crackdown.
Which, you know, it's funny because normally, it's America and Western countries that are calling on the United Nations to investigate third world countries, right? Africa, Latin America, the Middle East, you know, Central Asia, whatever have you. But now the tables are turning, and people are calling upon the UN to investigate Trump and ICE and our electoral processes, and of course this administration as a whole, especially with the Epstein files. So it is not it's not surprising that these calls are being made, but it's also, you know, a question of, will anything come of it? Because we've already seen the United Nations be crippled from doing anything against Israel. Is the United Nations really going to be able to do anything against America? Personally, I'm here for it. But realistically, the likelihood is very, very much so zero.
Writing, quote, "The Trump administration's egregious crackdown in Minnesota is not only flouting the Constitution, but also United States international human rights obligations that prohibit the use of racial and ethnic profiling, extrajudicial killings, and unlawful use of force against protesters and observers."
Which is 100% correct.
President Trump's former White House advisor, Steve Bannon's calling for ICE agents to be deployed at polling sites during the midterm elections.
I mean, we've been saying this was going to happen, that this was coming up. This was very much so quickly going to become a problem, that this administration, this regime, was going to threaten the primaries, whether in the actual, the midterm elections, sorry. Whether that includes the primaries or just the general remains to be seen. But here you have Steve Bannon calling for election interference at the polling locations. It's again, it's too on the nose. We know that this regime wants to rig the elections and steal the elections because that's what they did to get there in the first place. And of course, the complicit Democrats aren't doing anything about it. So, although I am running for Congress in Ohio's 15th Congressional District, and although I should be on the ballot this primary cycle, there is very, very real possibilities that the election gets manipulated by Trump and interfered with by ICE. That is a very, very real possibility.
Comments come just days after President Trump called on Republicans to nationalize voting in the U.S.
And you're damn right. We're going to have ICE surround the polls come November. We're not going to sit here and allow you to steal the country again. And you can whine and cry and throw your toys out of the pram all you want, but we will never again allow an election to be stolen.
In response,
which is funny because every accusation made by conservative groups is always an admission. It's literally an admission. So they're saying we will never allow an election to be stolen again, and yet we know that is damn near admitting that they stole this election, this past election, which, the anomalies notwithstanding, we covered this in stream on several different occasions. The fact that Trump won the 7 states that he won by the explicit margin necessary to avoid a mandatory recount should be alarm bells ringing, clarion sirens in the distance that something untoward was going on. And the fact that they're calling for the nationalization of elections now, as opposed to 20 or 30 years ago, they're not talking about ranked choice voting, though, are they? No, they're talking about controlling the electoral process at the federal level. And talking about bringing a paramilitary force to the polling locations to intimidate and harass voters. Like, these are not things a democracy does, a functioning society. That's just, the only countries that do this are authoritarian regimes. That's it. Which should tell you exactly what we are. Yeah, Bannon was giving Epstein PR advice on how to clean up his image after being convicted of sex trafficking. Child sex trafficking. Why is this man still speaking in public? I mean, honestly, I thought Bannon and Trump had a falling out on top of that. So, like, Bannon being not behind bars and now once again talking loud and proud on behalf of Trump is just mind-boggling. Right, steal the country from pedophiles. Evidently, that's what they're worried about, is that they are going to lose control of the country and then end up in The Hague or dangling from various platforms. Every election that has been stolen was stolen by the GOP. I mean, arguably, starting with Bush, there have been many credible arguments that we wouldn't have had a single Republican president since the Clinton administration, right? The last Republican would have been Bush Sr. had it not been for Bush and the miraculous Electoral College victory from Florida. So, yeah. And they talk about Venezuela's elections not being legitimate when they have some of the most secure elections in the world, approved by Jimmy Carter's group. And the Dems steal the primaries, the GOP steals the general election, right? So, there's just an overwhelming amount of corruption that needs to be addressed and is simply not with regards to this. And the fact that the response of the masses is more apathy rather than outrage and the largest voter turnout in history, it just goes to show that the pedophile cabal conspiracy has succeeded. The whole point was to disenfranchise the masses spread right-wing conspiracies or right-wing extremism as conspiracy theories, and desensitize the public to all of these criminalities. And we are living proof that it is working. So what we really need to do is get out the vote. It doesn't matter where you are in the country, what your district is, what the primary party dominance is in your district. You need to get people to turn out to vote and tell them, vote like your children's lives depend on it, because the pedophile billionaires are coming for them. Maybe that's the message. Vote now, or the Epstein cabal will take your children later. I mean, because that's where we fucking are, apparently.
Response to former Trump advisor Steve Bannon's comments, Democratic Senator Ed Markey said, quote, "This is a red alert moment. We have to start working to protect polling places from Trump's paramilitary ICE goons before it's too late," unquote.
You know, he says that, but what's his voting history say? Because the Democrats are good at talking the talk for a few sound bites and then absolutely bending over backwards to spread their cheeks for the fascism that they are getting.
Meanwhile, Republican Congress member Barry Loudermilk said he won't seek re-election this November, becoming the 29th House Republican incumbent to leave office early or announce a resignation. Republicans currently hold a slim 4-seat majority in the House. The U.S. Supreme Court will allow California to use a new congressional map approved by voters. It's designed to flip up to 5 seats now held by Republicans. On Wednesday, no justices dissented as the court issued a 1-sentence order on its emergency docket, often called the court's shadow docket. The brief ruling came exactly 2 months after justices signed off on a gerrymandered congressional map in Texas, where Republicans expect to pick up 5 additional House seats. In the Gaza Strip, 25 more Palestinians returned through the Rafah border crossing early.
I am so sorry. I think the winter's finally catching up to me. I think my hibernation genes are kicking in strong because it's been ridiculously cold weeks in a row. So I apologize, but the Rafah crossing and the strikes against Gazans, we went into a great deal of that yesterday. We might still touch on that today, but we're going to focus a lot on the ICE protests and the Epstein revelations. It's actually kind of shocking that the news isn't trying to come up with a catchy name to highlight and capture all of these incriminated folks that have been named in the files release. So this might be the only bit of Israel and Palestine that we talk about today, but we did cover this yesterday.
Earlier today, some of the first to return to the besieged territory since Israel partially reopened the crossing on Monday for the first time in nearly 2 years. Those returning to Gaza through Rafah described a harrowing journey with severe Israeli restrictions that included hours of interrogation, physical abuse, and the confiscation of personal belongings. One woman was stripped of essential medications along with toys and cell phones for her children and siblings. On Wednesday, Palestinians gathered to mourn loved ones killed by Israeli tank fire and airstrikes that killed 23 people in a day.
And again, this is during a ceasefire. A ceasefire. And Israel is using tanks and airstrikes against Palestinians who are literally trying to survive within rubble and tents without access to food, water, electricity, medicine, or even safety from the elements. And Israel is still using tanks and aircraft to murder Palestinians. And in fact, their attacks have only been increasing in severity over the past few weeks, making the ceasefire anything but in name. So and it's barely even making the news. I don't even think CBS, NBC, Fox, I don't think any of the Western media are even covering this at this point. This ceasefire has effectively fallen apart because Israel has been violating it since it was put into effect. And now they're not even pretending to hide their aggression. They are escalating the violence against Palestinians because they fucking can, and they want to put Palestinians in a concentration camp city, i.e. the ghettos, right? The Warsaw Ghetto is what they want to recreate for Palestinians, and yet claim that they're the victims and claim that they are survivors of the Holocaust, while committing every single atrocity that actual Holocaust survivors suffered through. The Israeli government is committing against Palestinians.
Among them was a medic who rushed to help victims of a strike on Khan Yunis and was then killed by a second attack on the same location.
We were surprised today by the targeting of our colleague medic, Hussein al-Samiri, who was martyred while carrying out his humanitarian duty of transporting the wounded from Khan Yunis. These attacks must stop. International law provides protection to providers of health and ambulance services.
Unless it's Israel committing the crime. And again, the fact that nothing is being done, that there are no calls for justice, or if there are calls, they are extremely weak and being drowned out by literally everything else that's happening. Like, here's the thing. I'm not advocating to abolish the United Nations, but let's quit pretending that the United Nations stands for anything other than Western supremacy and imperialism. Because what we are seeing, what is being carried out across the globe, and when the United Nations takes action, is universally against and only targeting the global South or the Middle East. Not a single resolution passed by the United Nations holds France, Germany, Spain, Portugal, Denmark, America, Canada, Australia, England, right? There has never been a United Nations resolution that has held a European country accountable for its actions. And there have been many credible crimes revealed, even by the United Nations, of wrongdoing by France, by Spain, by Italy, by all these other countries, about how they are taking advantage of the Sudan, of Somalia, of the Congo, right? South Africa, right? Argentina, Peru, right? Every country that the Western powers have stuck their grubby little mitts in have been credibly accused and found guilty of committing some sort of crime, atrocity, engaging in regime change, purposely manufacturing poverty in those countries. And yet the United Nations has never once held them accountable, because the United Nations is a tool of them to use against the global South and the Middle East. So let's just stop pretending that the United Nations serves any other purpose than spreading Western imperialism, because that's the only purpose the United Nations serves, which means we do need a better mechanism to enforce international law. What that looks like, I'm not certain, because any sort of international body will be as powerful as the countries that are involved in it, which are as powerful as they are wealthy, right? The more money, the more military, the more influence. And that would still result in Western imperialism. So unless China, India, and Russia can balance that power, that vacuum, and actually unite to hold European countries accountable without it devolving into war, of course, the United Nations is effectively just a tool of suppression. And it is extremely disgusting to see it so openly played out time and time again in the most recent of history. Again, why the fuck is the United Nations as a whole not sanctioning the United States for invading and occupying Venezuela, kidnapping and trafficking their sovereign head of state, and then charging them with bullshit charges, right? The United Nations should have been all over that. Again, when the United States threatened to invade Greenland, that should have also prompted sanctions against the United States. When America is threatening Iran, with strikes and invasion. That should be more sanctions. Not a single fucking thing has happened, even though there have been individual countries that have condemned those actions. But the United Nations, as a body, has not taken any action. And that's the point. That's the entire point. So, the international community and the international law is about as effective as Western imperialism allows it to be. And that really needs to change.
The Trump administration's move to approve $6 billion in new arms sales to Israel. Representative
What did I just fucking say, right?
Gregory Meeks, the ranking Democrat on the House Foreign Affairs Committee, said he had just 1 hour's notice from the Trump administration that it would disregard congressional oversight to approve the weapons transfers.
So the president or the executive branch is going to unilaterally disregard congressional oversight, violating the separation of powers, let alone the balance of powers. And no impeachment, no pushback, no censure, no anything.
Meeks said the administration's repeatedly ignored Congress's constitutional role by refusing to brief lawmakers on Gaza policy while failing to justify its actions. Meanwhile, Senate Minority Leader, Democrat Chuck Schumer, is defending his record of helping to arm Israel. Schumer spoke to a breakfast gathering of Jewish leaders in New York Sunday, a day after his...
So you got Trump aiding and abetting genocide and ignoring Congress's role in the process. And then on the other side of the table, the opposition party leader, Chuck fucking Schumer, stands with Israel and wants to make sure loud and proud that Democrats stand with Israel. Meaning both sides of the aisle, our entire federal government is complicit with aiding and abetting this genocide, which makes them traitors. Because... Not because of that. I mean, aiding and abetting genocide isn't treason, no. But if you are aiding and abetting treason on behalf of a foreign power, or at the behest of a foreign power, which has been heavily implied in the Epstein files release that states unequivocally that Epstein was Mossad, and that all of the blackmail is so that Israel has the ability to blackmail and compromise world leaders, especially in America, that is what makes it treason. That Israel has the ability to manipulate American federal leaders to doing what Israel wants, which is currently genocide.
Israeli attacks killed at least 31 Palestinians in Gaza, including 6 children.
All the aid that Israel needs, I will continue to fight for it. And we delivered more security assistance to Israel, our ally, under my leadership than ever before. We will keep doing.
I hope we save this video and play it during his Nuremberg-style trials, right before he's sentenced and subsequently executed. Again, I don't give a shit, right? I really do not care. I don't care if there's an R or a D next to your name. What I care about is that you serve your country and the American people. Not Israel, not Russia, not genocide, and certainly not billionaires. Right? Billionaires engaging in pedophilia, sex trafficking, murder, torture, and cannibalism, all whilst worshiping ancient gods of death. So, yeah. If you're aiding and abetting that in all of in any capacity whatsoever, you are a traitor and you deserve a traitor's send-off. And Chuck Schumer is 100% part of that. Yeah, I am not a fan of Chuck either. Not at all.
In the UK, 6 Palestine Action protesters were found not guilty Wednesday of
Remember when the Palestine Action protesters were arrested by the UK after the UK passed laws saying that pro-Palestine Action is a terrorist organization? i.e., supporting Palestine makes you a terrorist. Remember that? That only happened a few months ago. Well, they were acquitted, and the law that was passed in the UK still stands. So if you think America's the only one that's been compromised by Israel, you're wrong. The difference is people in the UK that were named on the list are resigning, and I don't know if they're being prosecuted yet, but they are definitely resigning in disgrace in droves. And the courts there are actually independent. They aren't selected or voted on by partisan members of the federal government, which, granted, our Constitution does require the Congress and the House, well, the House and the Senate, to be involved in the judicial selection process. But suffice to say, the founders didn't expect the partisan divide to exist or the party system to be a problem because they, again, didn't expect that to exist. So, suffice to say, other countries do truly have independent judicial systems, and we are seeing that at work. And we'll let Amy finish that thought.
Aggravated burglary, even after they admitted to breaking into a factory operated by Israeli defense firm Elbit. The pro-Palestinian activist had spent 18 months in jail awaiting trial. 18 other alleged Palestine Action members are currently awaiting trials scheduled for later this year.
Did I get my wires crossed? Because I was under the impression... Maybe it was that they got arrested, and then during the time of their arrest. Either which way, they were charged with terrorism after the fact. Or the law was changed just in time for them to be charged with terrorism, and then they were acquitted. Maybe we covered the story a few months ago. Either way, it doesn't matter. They are acquitted. And this is fantastic news because they should have never been charged as terrorists in the first place. Breaking and entering? Sure. But certainly not terrorism.
The British government has banned Palestine Action under its Terrorism Act over direct action protests against Israel's treatment of Palestinians. A spokesperson for the group Defend Our Juries said, quote, "These verdicts are a huge blow to government ministers who've tried to portray Palestine Action as a violent group to justify banning it under badly drafted terrorism legislation," unquote. The last remaining nuclear arms control treaty between the United States and Russia expired at midnight. The New START treaty put limits on each side's missiles, launchers, and strategic nuclear warheads. In October, President Trump directed the Pentagon to resume testing nuclear weapons for the first time since 1992.
You know, it's not bad enough that he's instigating war, that he's probably the leader of the Epstein cabal, and that, you know, he's a corrupt, treasonous piece of garbage. But now, the corrupt, treasonous piece of garbage is also trying to expand our nuclear arsenal, which is only going to trigger yet another nuclear arms race across the globe. After this treaty expired, honestly, I don't think there's a single millennial on Earth that thinks they're going to make it to old age, because at this rate, we're not even going to make it to middle age. All right? We're going to be lucky if we make it to 40. At this rate, at the rate things are going, we are going to be lucky if we make it to 40 years old. So, wow.
The White House has confirmed that high-level talks with Iran over its nuclear program will take place Friday in the nation of Oman, instead of in Turkey as initially planned. Mediators from Qatar, Turkey, and Egypt will propose a deal that includes limits to Iran's enrichment of uranium. Meanwhile, drop site news is...
but here's the thing. The audacity. So America's going to tell Iran to not try and build nuclear weapons, yet America, after the final treaty expired preventing them from expanding their own nuclear arsenal, the first thing they do is expand their own, begin in research and development of more nuclear weapons. So, the hypocrisy for one, and the audacity for two. Every country in the world should be looking at America like, who the fuck are you to tell anybody not to build or research or engage in nuclear testing if you guys do that within seconds of the final treaty expiring. Like, that's fucking insane. Absolutely insane.
Reporting senior U.S. military officials has informed the leadership of a key U.S. ally in the Middle East that President Trump could authorize a U.S. attack on Iran this weekend. Strikes could reportedly start as early as Sunday if the U.S. decides to move forward. On Wednesday, President Trump renewed his threat to attack Iran. He was speaking.
So we have high-ranking American leaders talking about attacking Iran as early as this weekend, and Trump reiterating he wants to attack Iran this weekend. So I guess we're attacking Iran this weekend, and hell, the stream is young. The last few times Iran was attacked, it was on a Thursday between 9 and 10 p.m. Eastern. So shit, we might be doing this live, folks.
Speaking with NBC's Tom Yamas.
Should the supreme leader in Iran be worried right now?
I would say he should be very worried, yeah. He should be.
In more news from Iran, CNN's reporting Nobel laureate Narges Mohammadi has gone on hunger strike in prison, where she's been held since her arrest in December for joining a memorial service for a lawyer and human rights activist who was found dead in his office in Iran. There are new revelations about an Abu Dhabi royal purchasing a stake in the Trump family's cryptocurrency company, World Liberty Financial, just days before President Trump's second inauguration. The Wall Street Journal reports Sheikh Tahnoun bin Zayed Al Nahyan, known as the Spy Sheikh, purchased a 49% stake in World Liberty Financial for $500 million. Months later, the Trump administration gave the United Arab Emirates access to tightly guarded artificial intelligence chips. As part of the deal, $31 million was funneled into entities affiliated with the family of Steve Witkoff, the U.S. envoy to the Middle East, who's also a co-founder of World Liberty Financial. His son, Zach Witkoff, is currently the CEO of World Liberty Financial. In response, Congressmember Ronan.
That whole sentence, that whole paragraph, let's rephrase. This UAE leader bought nearly 50% stake in a crypto finance firm Ponzi scheme that was created by Trump, who also had on the board the founding member, the Witkoffs, who are the primary liaisons to the UAE and are directly profiting from it, and then also getting a $31 million bribe or payoff as well, directly into their own pockets. Like, the corruption is not hidden. Like, we know that this is happening. This is well reported. This is well documented, and not a single arrest warrant has been issued, filed, nothing. And again, the United Nations isn't calling for sanctions. The United Nations isn't calling for arrests or investigations. No ICJ warrants have been issued, nothing. So America isn't prosecuting its own corruption. The United Nations isn't prosecuting this corruption. It's just happening, and we're supposed to sit here and scratch our heads and deal with it. And the answer is fucking no. Absolutely not. Absolutely fucking not.
Khanna announced he's investigating the deal between World Liberty Financial and Abu Dhabi Royal. In a letter to Zach Witkoff, Khanna wrote, quote, "These arrangements are not just a scandal, but may even represent a violation of multiple laws and the United States Constitution."
It's not may. It does. It won. What's with... I guess it's the legal jargon. I think we covered this actually, it was last week or the week before. Why reporters say allegedly for everything. It's because there is legal consequences, I guess. Fuck it. I'll be the congressman who suffers the legal consequences for accusing these people credibly, out loud and in the open, for committing the crimes that they are committing. Because there is no allegedly. It is in violation of the Constitution. It is in violation of federal and international law. And they should have the entire book thrown at them for it. Period. Dot. End of story. Christ.
Speak with Congressmember Ronan after headlines. The Washington Post laid off more than 300 journalists, almost a third of all of its employees, dismantling its sports, local news, and international coverage. The Washington Post Newspaper Guild said in a statement, quote, "In just the last 3 years, the Post's workforce has shrunk by roughly 400 people. Continuing to eliminate workers only stands to weaken the newspaper, drive away readers, and undercut the Post's mission to hold power to account without fear or favor and provide critical information for communities across the region, country, and world." Unquote.
Well, except ever since Jeff Bezos bought the Washington Post, the Post has been a right-wing rag ever since. So, although they are correct in stating the obvious, that a newspaper is supposed to stand for these things, they haven't ever since Jeff was able to buy it. Now that he's dismantling it for parts, I don't even understand why. Why wouldn't you keep this newspaper intact and turn it into your propaganda machine like you have been for the past few years? Like, are things that terrifying? Is the Washington Post getting... Are there journalists that are pushing back and trying to exercise their actual rights to the point that now it's a threat that it could disrupt everything that they've built? I mean, I don't know. Because so far, the Epstein scandal hasn't actually caused any problems in America, just everywhere else in the world. So again, I don't know. Are they that spooked? Are these billionaires that spooked that it's coming for them next, so they're trying to do damage control early in anticipation of that fallout? Because then, if that's the case, let's start arresting these fuckers now and call it a day. Because this is getting ridiculous.
Quote, "A reporter dedicated to covering Amazon was among the staffers laid off."
Of course.
The Washington Post is owned by Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon. The company recently spent $40 million to purchase the rights to a film about First Lady Melania Trump, then spent an additional $35 million to promote it, making the documentary the most expensive in history. And a new report by Human Rights Watch says almost 3/4 of the world's population is currently living under autocracy. The report warned the United States, China, and Russia are, quote, led by leaders who share open disdain for norms and, quote, wield considerable economic, military, and diplomatic power, unquote. In reference to the U.S., the report said, quote, Trump's second administration has been marked from the start by blatant disregard for human rights and egregious violation. This is Philippe Balopian, the executive director of Human Rights Watch.
Undermining the trust in elections, the sanctity of elections, going after the judiciary and judges, going after journalists, going after political opponents, going after universities, going after, big law firms, going after civil society foundations that are, quick to be labeled, domestic terrorists. And so we see a sort of very hostile environment in the U.S. and a very rapid decline of the quality of democracy in this country.
And those are some of the headlines.
So the 75% of the global population and the three most powerful countries on Earth, so 75% of 8 billion people, which is 6 billion people, 6 billion people on Earth are living under an autocracy. An autocracy. And among those 6 billion, the three most powerful countries on Earth are also autocratic. Now, I don't know what the population off the top of my head is of Russia. I think it's 200-something million. Oh, 146 million. My bad. Right here. So, 146 plus 330, and then I guess China is 1 point something billion. $1.4. So 330, 140, that's 470. So yeah, 2.8 billion of the 6 billion are just those three countries. And of course, I don't know if India is considered part of the autocracy, but I'm just going to hedge a bet that they are. You got North Korea, Japan. You got several of the European countries, although that was a European on the board, so I don't know if he's going to condemn his own country or not, but let's be honest. Right-wing extremism has taken most of Europe by storm as well. I'm actually curious because, like, what countries are not considered autocracies right now? Because it's not looking good for most countries. Like, South Korea is notable in the fact that it probably isn't an autocracy because it succeeded in democratically stopping an autocracy from emerging. So, South Korea seems to me as one of the only few functioning democracies in the world. Total. And if you throw in Greenland, okay, so that's 44,000 people and whatever the population of South Korea is. Because, I don't know that off the top of my head. 51.6 million. Okay. So 51.64 million people right there. So I don't know what the other 2 billion, 2.95 billion are, but yeah, I'm really curious to see which countries aren't autocracies or at least leaning away from it, because I would argue most countries are dangerously close to becoming autocratic and are leaning to autocratic. Colombia, Spain, and a few Latin American countries are doing okay. Many are turning autocratic, though. Yeah, but see, that's my point, right? And Spain might very well be doing good right now. They passed the legislation to help asylum seekers and immigrants. They did do that. They absolutely did. But who's to say that after the next election, or if U.S. aggression, or if Ukraine falls, that doesn't immediately flip? Same thing with Colombia. If America turns its eyes onto Colombia, they might have to, I won't say have to, but they might choose to turn autocratic just as a way to defend against American imperialism. So, and right, Mexico, sure. Mexico seems to be doing a really good job of being democratic. I'll say that. That's the problem too, right, though? The cartels are still an issue. And what if Scheinbaum's like, you know what? I've been trying to do things by helping people meet their basic needs, but it's going too slow and the cartels are working around it. So I guess we're just going to have to unilaterally deal with this situation, right? So I'm not saying that they are. I'm just saying there are still plenty of seeds planted throughout the world where autocracy and right-wing extremism are ripe for the harvest. You know what I'm saying? And the worst part of it all is that the Epstein files are revealing that this was all a deliberate act by Epstein and his cabal of billionaire pedophiles across the globe, which is mind-blowing. Absolutely fucking mind-blowing. It makes me sound like Alex Jones. But it's literally in the... And I guess there's this J-mail that somebody created where you can go through the Epstein files and literally go through the files that were released as if you were Epstein. And like, look at all this. Like, look, Elon Musk. Can you... Oh, it doesn't filter based on that. Okay, so let's see. Right wing. Well, I don't know how good this feature is supposed to be. Okay, the French paradox. Okay, I did not bother going through this at all, so it's a lot clunkier than I thought this was going to be. Oh, here we go. So the list for Steve Bannon. These are all people that he's trying to reach out to. Thiel, Barack, Blair. I Gardner Gates, which isn't Bill, obviously. There was a couple of other ones that were out here. Kaufman, Weingarten, Amabani, Rockslid, I mean. Schumer. Ha! I wonder if that's Chuck. That hasn't been brought up anywhere. It could be a different Schumer, I guess, but all I'm saying is that this thing, it does in fact exist, and I would have to actually bother going through this, but to find the exact emails, because I didn't save them. But there have been significant accounts of like QAnon being developed by 4chan, 4chan being a part of the cabal, and Epstein working with the founder of 4chan to push these conspiracies, right? It's the problem is, because they have been pushed as conspiracies for years now, to bring it up as anything other than that makes you sound crazy, except it's literally being revealed. So it's definitely a whiplash for me as a not just an activist and a politician and a candidate, but as a human being who also dismissed all of the Alex Jones conspiracy theories as just that. It's like, come on, we have a secret cabal of pedophiles leading the world from behind the scenes. It's like, what about the billionaires who are literally stripping our democracy from parts? I literally have been saying that for 10 years. Who gives a shit about whatever conspiracies might exist when the reality is before you? You have these billionaires buying and selling elections and doing the worst things imaginable in plain sight. And then it turns out both things were both true. The billionaires that were doing terrible things in plain sight were the same billionaires that were doing awful, awful things behind closed doors. And it's fucking mind-blowing that they were one and the same. Or not that they were one and the same. That part isn't the mind-blowing part. The fact that they were doing things overtly while also doing heinous things behind the scenes, even though they were getting away with it overtly. It's like they were doing the horrible sex trafficking things, the child sex trafficking things, for love of the game. It's like they're already getting away with manipulating geopolitical politics and driving societal norms, right? And desensitization of the masses. They were doing that openly and in public and getting away with it. But they wanted to engage in the malevolent evils as well. It's not like that led to this. It's this was part of this, and they didn't want to give that up while doing this. It's literally inextricably connected, which makes it infinitely worse. So, I guess we'll jump into dealings with ICE until I lose my mind on that. And then we'll move through
our top story tonight. Liam Ramos and his dad are back home in Minnesota. The 5-year-old boy taken into ICE custody 2 weeks ago.
ABC News was on their flight back here to the Twin Cities. Maria Bray has those exclusive moments of their long-awaited return. We're here.
Yeah, see, I would believe that ABC gives a flying fuck about that child if this journalist didn't make it a... And we got the exclusive first look at this event. You know, a child being kidnapped and tortured for 2 weeks and then released after national and international outrage. Like, everything is about selling and profit and marketing. Like, where's your outrage? Where is your disdain and your disgust? ABC has the exclusive story for this child's harrowing experiences at the hands of our criminal government. That is still making the story emotional and charged and engaging. I guess it's still marketing, without making it sound like you're talking about 1984 being released in a movie or something. I don't know, maybe... I think I'm already crashing out.
As those exclusive moments of their long-awaited return.
Liam is adorable.
We're here at Minneapolis International Airport, where a handful of supporters and a line of media was waiting for 5-year-old Liam Ramos and his father to walk through those doors. We're told Delta quietly escorted them out a different way, but ABC News was on the plane and captured the moments they landed. This exclusive ABC video shows Liam Ramos and his dad, Adrian Conejo Arias, on their flight back home.
Where are you going? ¿A dónde vas?
The little boy bringing smiles to passengers and even the flight crew when he visited the cockpit.
Wings just like mine.
The family's lawyer says the family from Ecuador has an active asylum case and is ordered not to leave the country. Even though the Department of Homeland Security called Liam's dad an illegal alien, their attorney says they entered the U.S. legally and were seeking protection. Just hours before arriving in Minnesota, they walked out of the Texas Detention Center Saturday night, picked up by Congressman Joaquin Castro, who posted on X, "They should have never been there in the first place. Thanks to your voices and outcry, they are now free." On Sunday morning...
See, and then you have the opportunistic pieces of shit in Congress who are trying to get a photo op and a soundbite from it. Like, no, the outrage of people isn't the reason why they were freed or should have been freed. You should have done your fucking job, Congressman Joaquin. What's his last name? Castro? Congressman Joaquin Castro, you should have been doing your fucking job in the first fucking place, preventing Americans and immigrants from being kidnapped and trafficked on American soil in the first fucking place. You shouldn't have been funding ICE. You shouldn't have been supporting the bills. You should have been pushing back significantly harder against this regime. You should not have been rubber stamping the appointments. And you sure as fuck should have not been silent up until somebody in your district that was sent from somebody else's district arrived. Okay? You should have been actively against this the second concentration camps opened up in your fucking state. And the fact that you waited until a perfect storm landed in your lap so that you could use it for your re-election in this midterm election cycle makes you a piece of shit. Liam should have never been kidnapped and trafficked in the first place. Never. And citizens' outrage should never have been necessary to free them in the first place. Because it should have never happened. Which, coincidentally, is one of the major motivating factors for my candidacy and my campaign for U.S. Congress in Ohio's 15th Congressional District. So that when these disingenuous fucksticks on either side of the aisle try and cry wolf or say that this, that, or the other isn't happening, I will be one of the first, if not the loudest, one saying it is exactly what it is. And everyone there in those chambers are the ones to blame. So let's do something about it and quit trying to profit off of it. Whether that's personal profit from like the sound bites and the re-election bids, or the literal making money off of trafficking and kidnapping brown people.
Some relief over the weekend for opponents of intense federal immigration enforcement in Minnesota. A young boy and his father are home after they were swept up by federal agents 10 days ago. Their release comes as tens of thousands continue to rally against the tactics used by ICE and the Trump administration.
We're here to show our love and support on Liam being back to Minnesota, being released from everything that he's been through. Us having a 5-year-old, I just couldn't imagine what the mom has been going through. 5-year-olds understand now, and this is going to be a trauma for Liam.
I think that we need just one person showing up, 2 people showing up to these things. If 100 people did that, we get momentum, and the more people show up, the more you inspire other people to show up. And
look at the masked motherfucker in the background here. Look at this piece of shit. I don't give a damn. I don't give a damn that he is actually being peaceful, calm, and polite. The fact that he is not joining the protesters on the side of the protesters and just doing his job, following orders, makes him a reprehensible fuckstick. And I don't care. Yep, I'm crashing out. It's okay. Let's just hear what this nice white lady has to say.
Liam was released this morning, and they flew him back to Minneapolis, which is what this protest was about. But it was because I think there was enough public pressure, and I think we just need to continue to put public pressure on these agencies, because that's how we make change. So.
That is exactly correct. That isn't conjecture. That isn't assumptions. That's not guesswork. That is fact. Every single authoritarian regime, every single empire, every single fascist dictatorship, what have you, has fallen because of sustained civil action against the state. And now it is rearing its ugly head against us as a whole. And the solution to that problem is, yes, sustained action, sustained presence. And yes, even voting. And here's the thing. Sam, if voting really mattered, they wouldn't let us, okay? Which is why disenfranchising half of the voting eligible people in America has become the norm, and they are still threatening to rig elections despite that. So let's... If elections actually made a difference, they wouldn't let us. Okay. For decades, our government and media and society has made it a social norm to not vote and to not participate in the democratic process. We have been told repeatedly, for generations even, that our vote doesn't matter because it's the lesser of two evils. To the point where does not vote is the largest voting bloc in America in every single election at all levels of government. So, voter apathy is now the socially accepted norm. You don't have to disenfranchise voters each election if you can just convince them that they don't need to vote in the first place, or that it doesn't matter. Right? Who's telling you your vote doesn't matter? Where are you hearing this from? And why is it constantly in the back of your head? Why do we not talk about politics anymore? Why is it not taught in the classroom? Why is it banned at the workplace and in schools? If our vote truly had no effect, they would encourage us to vote. Right? Think about it. If your vote literally didn't matter, they would make it the easiest thing under the sun. They would make it a Facebook poll. All U.S. elections would be held on Facebook. And based on your geotag, you would be getting 13 different polls for the positions and issues that are available for your districts, right? Where you happen to live. If voting didn't matter, they would make an app for it and then throw in AI and ads to make sure that you download it and use it. And then they would encourage attractive women to sexualize it so that men would actually show up and use the app. Okay? If voting didn't matter, they would capitalism it to death. They would make games and toys and movies and videos and commercials about it. They would make bras and booty shorts with QR codes going to how to vote. If voting didn't matter, they would commercialize the shit out of it. Because that's what we do in America. We commercialize the shit out of everything that doesn't matter. And convince you that it does. So, by that definition alone, your vote is the most powerful tool that you have. The second most powerful tool you have is the right to protest. And the third most powerful tool you have is the Second Amendment. Although one could argue it is the 10th Amendment, but that gets into that whole knowing how your constitutional rights work, which we don't generally as a country know how we would even enforce the 10th Amendment. But that's not the point that I'm trying to make. So your vote does matter, is the key takeaway. Your vote matters because they would not fight so aggressively and underhandedly to steal your vote, to undermine your vote, and to convince you to stay home if your vote didn't matter. Because at the end of the day, all governments, including authoritarian regimes, function due to the consent of the governed. Yes, even if you are an enslaved population, if you revolt against your slave masters, guess what they're not doing anymore? Mastering slaves. And we have seen that throughout history. We have seen it time and time again. We've also seen them fail. Absolutely. The Roman Empire lasted for 1,000 years? There were plenty of slave revolts. There were plenty of conquered nations that rose up and pushed back against Rome, ultimately leading to its collapse. That is true. But it is also true that the empire fell due to its own arrogance and corruption from within. And those parallels are being mirrored here in the United States. So, your vote is the single most powerful tool that you have at your disposal. And the fact that your initial reaction to say, no, it's not, is exactly what years of propaganda and misinformation and programming has conditioned you to think. So, if your initial thought of your vote matters is no, it doesn't, that means the conditioning is working. So we need to deprogram ourselves as a people, as a society, and then we need to show up at 100% voter turnout levels, and we can throw this administration under the fucking bus and bury them 1,000 feet below ground where they fucking belong. So, next video.
Crockett Early College High School students left class Friday to protest on the streets of South Austin.
What message are you hoping to send to Austin today?
Well, people are being killed in the street, innocent people, and I think our president has way too much power, and we're letting him do too much.
Hundreds of high schoolers,
I'd say maybe half of the school,
with a message to Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE.
We just want ICE to get out of here. We don't want them here. We never wanted them here, and it'd be better if they weren't here.
The walkouts stretched beyond Crockett and across the city to McCallum High School.
This is an attack on our neighbors.
And Austin Community College.
I think this is going to be able to see that, hey, the future of this country does not want ICE, that we want change.
The young protesters are following a nationwide trend against federal immigration agents. A YouGov poll in early January found just 30% of people 18 to 29 have a favorable opinion of ICE. Today, communities across Austin are asking for grace for their neighbors.
It's just such an honor to do this because many people have been deported and they don't get to say anything.
You know what? That's the other part of this, right? The youth, the kids, Gen Z and Gen Alpha. They're the ones that are taking the moment by the reins and riding it into the sunset. They're the ones that are driving a lot of these movements. And you know what? Ironically enough, crazy, throughout all of history, change has always been driven by youth movements. Always. Every single time, every era, every epoch of history. Each and every single time. Whether we're talking about the anti-war movement against Vietnam, whether we're talking about the civil rights movement, whether we're talking about women's suffrage, hell, even the fucking Civil War, the Revolutionary War. You know, our founding fathers were in their mid to late 20s and early 30s, right? You do realize that the founding fathers were our age, were the millennials of the era, right? Like, do people not understand that throughout all of history, uprisings and revolutions have been predominantly performed by the youth, the 20-somethings and the 30-somethings, right? I get these are teenagers, but obviously the times being what they are. So, the fact that youth-led movements are what change generational outlooks and societal values, this is extremely reassuring that even in deep red Texas, in Austin, there was a citywide protest against ICE. That should spark hope and give people a bit of a light at the end of the tunnel that things can change. But that also means people like me and people like the organizers, right? All of these activist orgs that have been around since Occupy Wall Street in 2008. That's literally 18 years later. These kids weren't even born yet while there were activists getting pepper sprayed by Obama. Okay? And those activists that were getting pepper sprayed by Obama weren't born yet when their parents were protesting against Iran-Contra or the Cold War or what was before? Oh wait, no, it was the Cold War and then Iran-Contra, or prior to that Iran-Contra, and then the Vietnam War before that, the Korean War, and so on and so forth, right? So each generation of young people has had their moment, to include in the United States, right? So all of those occupiers that are now having back pain, are possibly in leadership positions in activist organizations, getting elected at the local and state levels, running for Congress, so on and so forth, right? They need to have the clarity of mind, the presence of mind, to understand that this movement is only going to succeed with the youth. And that we cannot be the old bastards with gray hair telling the youth, like, this is not how it's done. We should certainly advise them on how to not make the mistakes that we made 18 years ago or, 30 years ago or whatever. But beyond that, we need to keep them energized. We need to give them the reins that we have held on to for the past decade or two, right? Because if we try and silence them or if we try to control them, like with our revolution, brand new Congress, brand new 35, there was another one. Those organizations tried to capitalize on the Bernie Sanders movement and then ended up snuffing it and getting co-opted by the Democrats, right? What we need is a nonpartisan youth-led movement for change. And it needs to be nonpartisan, right? And if you are partisan or if you are running in a primary election, then you need to respect the nonpartisan aspects of these movements. Absolutely tap into that energy. Ask to speak. Ask to be able to be a part of it, right? But be prepared to get pushback if you're a disingenuous fuckbag, right? This is the time for the anti-establishment organizing, activism, and candidacy. Now is the time to take a stand against the way things are, to cast down the status quo. And it could not be more evidenced by the fact that students in Austin, Texas, caused all of Austin, Texas, the entire city, or at least broad swaths of the city, to come out and supporting them. That shows that there is a societal shift in the air, and it is not towards fascism, it is towards liberation. And that is what we should be standing for every moment of every single day, which is why your vote matters. It might be too late to support a primary candidate, right? It might be too late. Maybe you have to choose between one or two establishment candidates, and that sucks. It absolutely does suck. But maybe your state allows you some grace to get an independent or a third party. So do that. And if you can't, then build community, build organization, and support the candidates across the country that need it. All right? That is what we can do in this moment. We can let the young people lead from the front. We can guide them from the sides and from the back, but we need to support each other as liberators, as resistance to this fascism. That is what this should be telling everyone. So, that's the end of this video. There are two more. No, there's actually a bunch of videos. Well, let's do some good news, yeah?
Students at several Central Texas schools protested federal immigration enforcement today. Hundreds walked out of class. Fox 7 Austin's Jenna King is joining us live in Kyle with more tonight. Jenna.
Yeah, Mike, Hayes CISD confirming with us that hundreds of students across 5 campuses all walked out of class today, and they weren't the only district. Students across Central Texas walking out of class Monday.
And look, there are even adults, not just students, adults doing the little honky honk as they're driving by and seeing. Obviously, they're part of the protest, but the oncoming and passing traffic, like, this isn't just isolated to the youth. People, even in deep red Texas, are against the fascism and murder of American citizens by American agents.
Walkouts come weeks after several shootings in Minnesota involving federal officers and among growing concern over immigration enforcement. In Hayes CISD, district officials say students walked out of Hayes High School, Live Oak Academy High School, Johnson High School, Lehman High School, and Barton Middle School.
Popped up on Instagram that we're going to walk out at the school to protest for ICE, and we saw Hayes, other schools in Hayes district protest, so we decided to hop on too.
Fox 7 was at Lehman High School as hundreds of students walked out of their final period of the day around 2:50 Monday afternoon.
Me personally, my family came here to give me a better life and to give my siblings a better life. And, you know, they pay taxes. We do everything just like all the citizens do. We do the same things as everything. And yeah, you know, we're just trying to prove to everybody that we're just human beings as everybody else.
Others say they've...
And how depressing is that? We are just trying to prove that we are human beings like everybody else. And the fact that that's not the primary message, that that's not the primary talking point, that immigrants are human beings and that they should be treated as such, and that what we are doing, the way we are treating immigrants and immigration as a concept, is the most inhumane thing possible since World War II, since the Nazis. I mean, I'm just throwing it out there. The fact that it has to be said that we are humans too should kind of hit the message home that we are the fucking bad guys. They give me hope. That's why I take Leia to protests, even though it makes me a little nervous. Well, as long as you make sure that the protests don't have a police presence, that's when they get dicey. But there and again, you know, sometimes the protests aren't dicey in the slightest, and then cops show up and make it dicey. And it is what it is.
Seen the impacts of immigration enforcement firsthand.
They took our uncle. Like, I mean, we're glad already that they released him. Like, we just hope that it doesn't happen with our other family members. And like we just don't want ICE here in Kyle no more. Like, we just want to live a peaceful life here.
Pflugerville ISD confirming students from multiple schools walked from campus to the Justice Center Monday afternoon. Manor ISD says students from Manor High School, Manor New Tech High School, and Manor New Tech Middle School also participated in the walkouts. Last week, students at 14 Austin ISD campuses participated in student-led demonstrations against immigration enforcement. AISD Superintendent Matias Segura saying in a letter Friday that the walkouts were not endorsed or sponsored by the district, adding staff cannot physically prevent a student from choosing to leave campus.
Which says that if they could, they fucking would have. Which just goes to show that, like, even school, even education is being viewed as a form of control and manipulation of a population. So, anywho, good for the kids. It looks like the rest of these videos are about the same thing, so we've covered it. And if I crash out some more, we'll watch some more so I can calm back down.
This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez. In Minnesota, the Hennepin County Medical Examiner has ruled the death of the 37-year-old VA ICU nurse, Alex Preti, a homicide due to multiple gunshot wounds. He was fatally shot by 2 Border Patrol agents January 24th. His killing comes just weeks after ICE agents fatally shot Renee Good, another 37-year-old. She was a 37-year-old mother of 3 in Minneapolis. On Friday, the Justice Department has announced it's conducting a civil rights investigation into Preti's death. However, the administration has refused to identify the agents involved. But over the weekend, ProPublica identified the men as Border Patrol agent Jesus Jesse Ochoa and Customs and Border Protection Officer Raimundo Gutierrez, both from Texas. ProPublica reporter David McSwain joins us now from Washington, D.C. David, thanks.
So I don't know if they're going to cover this, but I want to mention it. The 2 people that were involved in murdering Alex Preti are of Hispanic origin and specifically belong to the Border Patrol. And as soon as those names were revealed and their identities and their ethnicities were revealed was the exact moment in which Stephen Miller, Kristi Noem, and all of the other racist pieces of garbage in this regime started saying, you know what, we will look into this. We are going to hold them accountable. We'll put them on administrative leave. We're taking this very seriously. But up until that moment, deny, 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 and ignore. And in fact, passing the blame onto Alex Preti. Now, sure, maybe we can argue and take some credit that the protests had something to do with that as well. But quite frankly, according to the statements, according to the rhetoric, and according to, well, the reality that we witnessed with our own eyes and ears, it wasn't until ProPublica actually revealed their identities where the narrative finally started to change, which should actually scare the shit out of everybody, because that means if white people continue to get murdered by ICE, that's not going to be that outrage that will ensue is not going to be enough to sway this fascist regime. The only thing that'll sway this fascist regime is if it's brown people doing the killing. Not that they care that the brown people are doing the killing, but if it's revealed that it was the brown people that caused the ire of Americans to be justifiably outraged, then and only then will they do something about it. So, just putting that out there.
Thanks so much for being with us. Can you start off by talking about the decision of ProPublica to name the names? Now, of course, we do know the name of the agent who shot Renee Good, but we haven't known these names, the 2 CBP agents.
Right. Well, this is a matter of intense public interest. We've all seen the videos. More than a week had passed, and in the interim, we were asking questions of, who are these officers involved in this shooting that, from various angles. I think we all have questions about who shot and how it escalated so quickly. And, we came to the decision when we were able to identify these officers that this is in the public interest. This country has a tradition and norm of being able to identify law enforcement officers, both for their safety and the safety of the public. And, the shielding of agents, both in terms of the administration's secrecy around them and their ability to wear masks as, we see these violent encounters in the streets. The first line of accountability would be able, for families to, find any sort of accountability would be to identify who those officers are. And, for potential prosecutors and so forth, same thing. And we found out from state leaders in Minnesota that, there was an intense frustration around just being able to figure out what happened and who was involved.
And David, what were you able to?
Okay. I guess they're going to get into the jargon of it. So suffice to say, ProPublica revealed the names because it was finally politically advantageous to do so. Again, I don't know that any of these news networks or publications have actually been supportive of revealing the identities of federal agents, other than if they committed crimes, because they have been masked for months now, and I don't know that there has been nearly this level of outrage or active engagement in preventing it or uncovering the faces than with this situation. And again, because of the public outcry and because of the major public interest is the only reason why they bothered with it. Like, what about the other 7 people that were killed this month? Right? I don't even know the other 7 names because they're barely mentioned, and I have to keep researching them to remember. Right? And I know that makes me sound like a bastard as well, but that's the reality. When you're constantly being bombarded with news and atrocities, it's difficult to keep up with all of the finer details, which is, of course, the point. Empires hide behind dozens of atrocities rather than admit guilt to one, right? So, the point that I'm making is Renee Good and Alex Pretty weren't the only 2 people that were killed. They were the only 2 white people that were killed. And that's why we know their names. That because we've been repeatedly hearing those names. But there was literally a lynching right before Renee Good was murdered. And then before that, there were 4 other kills. And then before that, there were 32 fatalities in detention centers. And I'm not even certain how many were killed in the open. So the point here is ProPublica didn't give a shit about any of those victims. But now, after the fact that 2 white people got killed, and especially a white male veteran, now all of a sudden it's priority number 1. So yes, although I will applaud their efforts, I'm still going to scrutinize their motivations. We'll use it like that. ProPublica is pretty good though. Okay, that's fine. That's fair. I'm not saying that they are bad. I'm saying that they certainly haven't been on the forefront until recently. Oh my God, this dryness is killing me. This dryness is killing me in ways I did not know was possible. Like, I feel so dry. Okay.
In the past year,
Al Jazeera is reporting on the U.S. Congress. This should be interesting.
ICE has become the highest funded law agency in U.S. history.
And they use that money.
And the meeting began with a table showing how the ICE budget has been increased from less than $6 billion to more than $80 billion since July last year. This over a period in which the agency's actions have led to increasing public outrage. Massive anti-ICE demonstrations were further fueled by the killing of 37-year-old Renee Good on January the 7th, and her brothers were among those addressing the committee.
These encounters with federal agents are changing the community and changing many lives, including ours, forever.
She believed tomorrow could be better than today. She believed that kindness mattered, and she lived that belief. Even when things were hard, Renee looked for the light.
Remembered too, 37-year-old Alex Pretty, also shot and killed in Minneapolis.
Testifying too were Alia Rahman, who was violently detained by agents in Minneapolis while traveling to a hospital appointment. Martin Daniel Rascon, who was shot at by Border Patrol in California while driving with his family. And Marimar Martinez, who was shot in Chicago.
Do you know what happened after you were shot? What happened to the agents who shot you?
I'm not too sure what happened to him, honestly.
The action demanded of lawmakers.
And that's kind of the point, right? All these senators can do is like, well, what happened next? As if they aren't a United States senator with the full force and power and authority of the United States Constitution to drag these motherfuckers before a Senate hearing committee and beating them to death with questions. I don't understand. These elected officials act like they don't have any power to do anything about this. They're just like, oh my gosh, I feel so sorry for you. I wish there was literally anything I could do as a United States senator or a United States congressman who has a constitutional mandate of oversight over the very agency that shot at, kidnapped, and tried to kill you. Or in the case of the few that were killed, your survived loved ones. Criminy. And yes, it is not lost on me that they were both 37, which is literally a year older than me. Like, my generation is being murdered by this regime in cold blood for literally exercising their rights or just being in the wrong place at the wrong time. And being smeared by this regime on top of that. That is definitely not lost on me. Also, defend the homeland. Für Deutschland. Ein Volk, ein Reich, ein Führer. That's the one. Blut und Boden and schütz eure Heimat. Protect your homeland. Right there! It's right fucking there. And it's from the Jewish Democratic Council of America. Yes, of America. Where was it? Right, we'll have our home again. Where's... Well, the one people, one leader. Blood and soil. Okay, well, you get the idea. I know that this is AI right here. But that was the link that was showing. All I'm saying is it's right fucking there. Protect your homeland. And then what do we got? Defend the homeland. Right there. It is literally being bought and paid for with your tax dollars, with my tax dollars, on government vehicles. Actual Nazi slogans. And this really grinds my gears because when I was in my Republican meeting in Madison County, Ohio, I got asked by a kid, adult, I guess, young Republican, something or another. He tried to get me in a gotcha. You called Trump a Nazi. Do you stand by that? And it's like, literally, yes. Because under his regime, they are literally using Nazi quotes to promote their policies. Like, I don't, I don't. Granted, I wasn't actually prepared for that question. I don't exactly keep Nazi talking points and how they correlate to Trump's actions on note cards in my pocket when I go to places. But evidently, I fucking need to have, how is Trump actually being a Nazi, cue cards ready to go, and just have those handouts ready. Because, this is verbatim. That literally, I just...
That they follow through on threats to withhold funding for the agency unless reforms are introduced. The demand, too, that ICE agents be held to the same standards of accountability as other branches of law enforcement. But these calls were made to partisan ears. Not a single Republican from Congress attended the proceedings.
I think it should be mandatory. You shouldn't be able to skip the hearing. You need to fucking show up. Because you need to hear this shit from your constituency. You represent the people. So show the fuck up.
Mike Hanna, Al Jazeera, Washington.
Oh, that was the end of the video. Okay. Chicago.
Well, we're going to stay in Chicago for our top segment. As President Trump intensifies his immigration crackdown nationwide, local resistance is also growing, with communities coming together to fight back. Protests nationwide have continued in the wake of the fatal shootings of Renee Good and Alex Preti in Minneapolis, while many city and state officials have also stood defiant in the face of Trump's relentless attacks on immigrant and other communities. Last week, Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson signed an executive order directing Chicago law enforcement to investigate and document reports of illegal activity by federal immigration agents in the city. The move came in the aftermath of Trump's so-called Operation Midway Blitz in Chicago last year, when federal immigration agents flooded neighborhoods, snatching residents off the streets. This is Mayor Johnson speaking as he signed the executive order.
What we have seen in Chicago, at least 2 people shot by ICE and Border Patrol agents, including one who was killed, Savario Villegas Gonzalez.
So, remember how I said that the only people we know about or are hearing about consistently are the ones that were killed in Minneapolis because they were white? Guess what? There was an ICE agent-based murder in Chicago. This guy.
Including one who was killed, Savario Villegas Gonzalez.
Diego Gonzalez, okay? Savario Diego Gonzalez was murdered in Chicago by ICE last year. And neither have I heard his name prior to this, or at least if we did cover it, it has been since drowned out. But we haven't heard it nearly enough to be able to pronounce it quickly and simply. It doesn't roll off the tongue for me yet like Alex Preti does. And Alex Preti didn't roll off the tongue for me either at first, because I'm like, what the hell kind of name is Preti, right? It took me a while to do that, but we kept hearing it, and now it's flowing. This is the point of Empire hiding behind atrocities. We have no idea anymore. Like, most of us would not know about Savario at all if it wasn't for this video. And even Anna, who has a significantly better memory especially with names than I do. And it is sad. It is extremely distressing that we aren't even able to keep up with the crimes that are happening. We are barely staying above water, keeping up with the crimes that are happening and that we are being bombarded with. Yes, on our stream, we try and dig a little deeper than the surface and talk about more than just the hot button issues. But even then, even we fail to hit every single thing, because guess what? There's that much shit happening.
An unarmed father who had just dropped his kids off to school. These rogue federal agents are taking us backwards as a city.
That's right.
They are causing chaos and confusion. In response, the city of Chicago must respond with accountability and transparency. The ICE unnoticed executive order is a step towards justice. This executive order will make Chicago the first city in the country to set the groundwork to prosecute ICE and Border Patrol agents for criminal misconduct.
Now, don't get me wrong. Like, shouldn't that be the case already? Why the fuck would we not be able to prosecute federal agents for crimes committed regardless? Like, that's, and I get it, there's probably some statute at the federal level that says federal agents are immune to prosecution. Well, actually, no, we did cover that federal agents are immune to prosecution while conducting official business or whatever. And it's like, that doesn't even make sense. So they have immunity from crimes because they are on duty, on the clock? Like, no, that really doesn't make sense, no matter how you choose to slice it or flip it. So I guess maybe the executive order is necessary, in which case that needs to be happening in every single city in America. Every, not just major cities, every city.
Because we need to send a clear message. If the federal government will not hold these rogue actors accountable, then Chicago will do everything in our power to bring these agents to justice.
That was Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson. During his remarks, he referenced Silverio Villegas Gonzalez, a 38-year-old Mexican dad of two, who was shot and killed by ICE agents in September in a Chicago suburb. He was unarmed and had no criminal record. The ICE officer involved in the shooting remains unnamed. Gonzalez is among at least 13 people, including U.S. citizens, who've been shot by federal immigration agents since September. At least 4 of those shootings have been fatal. This
from September, which is literally the past 4 months. In 4 months, there have been 9 shootings. Is that what you said?
Including U.S. citizens who've criminal record. The ICE officer involved in the shooting remains unnamed. Gonzalez is among at least 13 people, including
13.
U.S. citizens.
13 people since September. Now, I ain't the best at math, but I ain't dumb. That is literally almost 1 shooting every single week in the past 4 months. That we know of. That has been publicized, that has been caught on film, on video, is being reported in some capacity. Like, that is not normal. That is unacceptable, for one. I mean, but it's also not normal. Except, actually it is, because if you look at law enforcement, how many police shootings are there every single year? Police-involved shootings is, I think, what, 20,000? Which is multiple a day. No, that's not quite 10 a day. But it's like 7 or 8 a day. Every day. So, yeah, no, I guess it is normal in America. Except now, we are deliberately targeting a specific ethnic and cultural minority. Which, by the way, is grounds for either the definition of genocide or ethnic cleansing, depending on the motivation. Which is another way of saying semantics. All right. I'm in the stress eating phase of our stream, so let's go straight up to Maine.
This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez. In the state of Maine, the Portland City Council passed a resolution Monday night to allow Portland's mayor to participate in lawsuits against ICE. The vote came after federal agents conducted immigration raids in Portland and in Lewiston as part of what the Trump administration has called Operation Catch of the Day. They are playing on the fact that Maine is well known for its seafood as they talk about catching people. Operation Catch of the Day.
And she's emphasizing it over and over again to highlight the absolute depravity of this regime and the way they are treating people, which in of itself is a human right. I mean, all of this is criminal behavior. And the fact that they are making it a game, that if they are trying to needle the groups affected and mocking them in the process, just goes to show that the whole point is fear, terrorism, chaos, suffering, pain, cruelty. It has nothing to do with immigration or security. It's about love of the game and knowing that they're going to get away with it for now. I don't know what else to say about that.
Lewiston and Portland have sizable Somali populations, just like Minneapolis. The resolution passed by the Portland City Council noted that attendance at some schools has decreased by 20% and that many workers are afraid to leave their homes. Maine state lawmakers are also considering legislation aimed to keep ICE out of schools, healthcare facilities, public libraries. Lewiston Mayor Carl Shaleen testified last week.
As the mayor of Lewiston, I'm advocating strongly for LD 2106. This bill protects the people of Maine as they visit and use our community institutions and also safeguards their personal information from our tyrannical and authoritarian federal government. I wish that things were different, but they are not. Mass government agents are here snatching our residents and sowing fear and terror. This bill allows our neighbors to safely visit their doctor, check out a book, and go to second grade. Passage of this bill also sends a strong message that this legislature stands in complete resistance to the federal government's slide into fascism. I appreciate Representative Sato for sponsoring this bill and the committee's time. Thank you.
This dude is fucking based. He did not hesitate. He did not hesitate to throw them under the bus for the fascism. And he highlighted the fact that the passage of this bill will allow our citizens to go to school, go to the hospital, get a library book, and to go to second grade. Because ICE is targeting children as well. What a fucking legend. Everybody. Carl L. Sheelan, mayor of Lewiston, Maine. Vote for that motherfucker whenever his re-election is up. Holy crap. That is the kind of mayor you want in the seat of the mayor. What a man. What a guy.
Coalition based in Portland, Maine. The group represents over 100 member organizations. Operation Catch of the Day? Mufalo Cheatham, it's horrifying to even say that. But can you talk about what has happened in the last weeks? Have you experienced an ICE surge in Maine? I'm not talking about the weather. And talk about who's been arrested, who's been taken, and how you're organizing with the Maine Immigrant Rights Coalition.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to think about the, catch of a day. But again, we're a state where, like you said, we're a lobster state. But yeah, it's been a whirlwind. I mean, since January 20th, when I got the first verification at 7:45, and 4 or 5 days later, it was just sheer panic. I mean, it was unbelievable. It was unbelievable. I think you kind of watch these things on TV, and then when you see them down the streets, it just sends a very wave of fear, and it was just panic. It was just panic. So, but our organization has been really planning for this. We didn't think we were going to be, this soon. We thought they would come, but not this soon. But our organizing, our hotline, we had over 5,000 plus, increase in phone calls, for the next 5 days after January 20th. It was just boots on the ground. It was just boots on the ground. But we've been organizing, as we started seeing the people who are being picked up, it just became real, it just became real because it was your neighbor, it was also, just somebody that you go to church with. And when we heard that they were coming for the worst of the worst, that was really painful to see, because it was just ordinary people that we know.
And that is exactly what we have been saying from day one. Day one of ICE. Day one of invading Los Angeles back in February last year. I guess this has been going on for a year now. We have been saying that people's apathy is because it's not happening to them in their own homes, in their own communities, their own streets. Again, the apathy, the lack of community, the lack of just simple empathy, just human empathy for the suffering of others is so lacking in American society that it takes watching people getting murdered for months, and then it only hitting home when it's two white people back to back, for it to finally click, oh shit, things are bad, and they are not going after the worst of the worst, they are going after everyone that stands in their way. And yes, Operation Catch and Release is fucking disgusting. Just the name of it is disgusting. The actions are disgusting. The fact that they breached that old man's home without a warrant and then drug him out in his skivvies in like -degree weather, disgusting. Absolutely fucking depraved. But the outrage should not be waiting until it happens to you or your neighbors or your community. I got to admit, Grove City, Ohio, which is where I live. I'm getting close to doxing myself. Grove City, Ohio has had Operation Buckeye in effect for weeks now. And we have seen ICE in Grove City on numerous occasions. But you know what the talk of the town is? Not ICE. If anything, it's about affordability and the cost of housing and healthcare, which is also valid, but has nothing to do with ICE. And the problem with that is ICE, despite being in Columbus, Ohio, Grove City and surrounding areas, right? They aren't terrorizing communities. And the reason is because of this one right here. No. Yes, is this one. Because of this shit right here, folks. Ohio does not have a duty to retreat. We are a stand-your-ground state. So ICE deploying in Ohio to terrorize communities is likely to get themselves shot. Now, I may have been cheeky and said as much at Grove City Council, and I may or may not have posted that video on my YouTube channel. I did. And I may or may not be playing that for you as soon as I friggin' find it. February 2nd. Yes, here we go. So, hold on. For your viewing pleasure.
Well, much like the speakers before me, I'm going to talk about ICE. As a veteran as well, as a citizen, and as a candidate for office, it's something that when you see these things happen on the news, in our streets, literally getting a call that there is ICE encamping outside of Columbus, Bilingual West, that they are scouting our schools in our community to determine whether or not they can find a vulnerable time and place to target immigrant children or just communities of color. I'd also like to point out that this is not isolated, that we have seen with Operation Buckeye that this has been going on through all of our communities, all of our cities, and not just Ohio, or the central Ohio, but through Dayton and Cleveland and Cincinnati as well. This is not isolated to Columbus, this is not isolated to Grove City. Our brothers and sisters in Springfield are about to face an actual invasion by a paramilitary force, and I say that with the authority of someone who has served in active duty, learned how to do counter-insurgency training and activities, was someone who engaged in policing activities, guard duty, vehicle inspection, personnel inspection, building security, and personnel security. I say these things not lightly. I swore an oath to the Constitution. I swore an oath that said, I will protect and defend the Constitution from all enemies, both foreign and, I must emphasize, domestic. As I believe the first veteran who spoke said, what can happen in our communities is that they do warrantless entries into our buildings. So let me remind you of something for all of you on the council here. The state of Ohio is a stand-your-ground state. I don't say that as a threat, I say that as a fact. I am armed, I am trained. I am the exact definition of what the Second Amendment was there for. A trained, well-regulated militia to protect and defend, to ensure a free state. I am not alone. And if those terrorists come through my door, they will leave in a body bag. That kind of danger, that kind of imminent threat is why the Second Amendment exists and why you have a duty and obligation to your community to ensure that our law enforcement and our streets remain safe from this paramilitary force. Thank you, sir.
By the way, this is still a cosplay prop. This isn't what I was referencing. Because that would get me banned from Twitch. So, that was at Grove City City Council meeting earlier this week. Wow, it's been a busy fucking week. And I'm just kind of pointing out here that yes, I'm a little unhinged on stream. I'm using a lot more swear words and screaming. But the delivery, the message, the context that I am discussing and standing for, and the policy and the provision and this, that, and the other, like, I can be charming and I can be pleasant and I can be politically correct and I can be refined. I can actually walk the walk of being a congressman. I know that might not be believable if you only know me from streams. But I hope that was kind of an example that I am about that life. I am about that life. When I told the entire assembled body of the city council that we are a stand your ground state, and I had every intention of exercising my rights as an American and resident of Ohio, that if that paramilitary terrorist force comes to my door, they will be leaving in a fucking body bag because I am an American. They have no fucking reason to come to my door. I am an American. Citizen. Veteran. Congressional candidate. They come to my door because they want to terrorize me. They want to try and instill fear. They want to, I don't know, plant evidence. But it's not because I'm a fucking illegal. It's not because I'm the worst of the worst. So they come a knocking on my door. They gonna be a leaving one way or the other. And that was the polite way of saying it. So that was just Monday. Holy shit. It feels like it's been a month already since that. It's just been... It's been a week, all right? It's been a week, and it keeps on weeking. All right, so, what else do we got here? Oh, my God. Oh, this video. Okay, I'm going to preface this video without spoiling it too much. A MAGA piece of shit got out of his truck to assault a teenage girl who was protesting on the road. And then karma.
Growing outrage in Texas over this disturbing video that police say shows 45-year-old Chad Michael Watts assaulting a teenage girl. The incident happened Monday in Buda, Texas, just outside Austin, during a student anti-ICE protest.
From what we're told, the adult stopped at the stoplight and rolled down his window. The juvenile female in question and the male were yelling back and forth at each other. The female went and kicked the male's truck. He got out, and then that's when the physical altercation happened.
Watts, who police say was the primary aggressor, seen here appearing to lunge at the young woman. A fight breaks out, and then chaos.
And he gets his ass beat by a bunch of little girls. Okay, maybe not like school children, but getting his ass handed to him by no less than 5 teenagers. Let's see that again. And Brady goes down.
Lunge at the young woman. A fight breaks out.
And
then
Brady goes down. All right.
Seen here
And he,
wait
for it, folks.
A fight breaks
and
out.
Brady
And
goes
then
down. Just tackled to the ground and just piled on. Get fucked, you racist chud. You sexist chud. Seriously? And of course, the preface was the little girl kicked his big old pickup truck, and that's when he got out of the vehicle and started assaulting the child who kicked his truck. I don't know. The fact that you stopped to argue with a little girl in the first place, and that you were so insecure and intimidated and whatever else by this little girl hurting your little feelings about your favorite paramilitary Nazi force for your pedophile president, that you got into a screaming match with a child and then got out of the car and then got your ass handed to you by that little girl and her friends, you deserve everything that you got coming. Because you know what, buddy? There's a hierarchy in prison. It starts with serial killers, right? The worst of the worst, right? Like, you eat people after murdering them and wear their faces. You're number one of not being fucked with. You know what? Douchebags who assault little girls because their feelings got hurt, you know where they are? Right there, right above child touchers, right above the pedophiles. You assault children sexually, you're on the bottom. You assault children physically, you're just above them. This motherfucker is going to get reamed every single day that he's in prison. And he deserves each and every single act of violence against him. Let's watch that one more time.
Here appearing to lunge at the young woman. A fight breaks out, and then chaos. As a second video shows other students jumping in. The incident, the latest amid nationwide student walkouts protesting against.
Like a pack of wolves taking down a bear. Just. That. The kids are all right. The kids got this shit going. Again, student-led movements. They have the energy, they have the focus, they have the drive, because quite frankly, their futures are at stake. If this becomes the new normal, their futures are out the fucking window. So yes, children, yes, teenagers, yes, Gen Z, go out there and punch a fucking Nazi. Let's go. Like, Scouts, fight to the death against the Titan invasion. Getting a little hyped, I'm sorry.
ICE. Last week, a student in Nebraska was hit by an SUV flying a Trump flag during demonstrations
And
there.
see, the person driving that car should have been drug out in the street and kicked to death. If not to death, I'm sorry. That's a death threat on Twitch. That's against the terms and conditions. Turn of phrase, I'm sorry. Kicked into karma. And then arrested for vehicular assault and attempted vehicular manslaughter.
Watts has now been arrested and charged with 2 counts of assault. NBC News has been unable to reach Watts for comment.
I bet.
Police say more charges could come, and they are asking the public for patience.
Honestly, look at that gaggle of kids. There was at least 20 kids there. The fact that they let him walk away and didn't, what's the, Lord of Flies him? Like, those kids could have just as easily torn him to pieces. Like, actual ripped off his arm and beaten him to death with it. The fact that they just pulled him off the other girl and just gave him a what for and then let him scurry back. That guy should be grateful that those kids weren't out for blood and were just trying to protect one of their own.
As the investigation continues.
And I know there's a lot of emotion that's tied to this incident, but we have to present a solid case for prosecution. We don't want the public to take justice into their own hands.
Priscilla Thompson.
Well, guess what? If you do not bring justice to those who have been wronged, those who are wronged will seek justice on their own. And what are we seeing? That our entire government infrastructure, from federal all the way down to the local, is corrupt, is complicit, is bought and manipulated by moneyed interests who want to subjugate the population. So, if you don't want the people to rise up and take things into their own hands, maybe, hear me out, tell your donors to fuck off because you want to save your own damn skin. Honestly, if cowardice is your motivation, if fear motivates you, be afraid of the people rising up and tearing you limb from limb. That's what you should be afraid of. Not whether or not the billionaires and the millionaires who funded your campaign choose to do so when you're up for re-election, or if they expose the little bit of dirt they had on you. Or I guess the higher up you go, it's a lot of dirt, but okay. At the end of the day, that dirt sends you to prison. The people's wrath sends you there, and a little bit over there, with blood strewn everywhere. So you can either live in disgrace and betray your donors who have blackmail on you, or you can be unalived by the enraged masses. Those are your options. Just, you know, putting that out there.
This morning, White House border czar Tom Homan announced a drawdown of 700 personnel from the immigration crackdown there, effective today. That leaves about 2,000.
So I think this was covered by Amy Goodman, right? Because I've been seeing this on Facebook and throughout the day, so I'm not sure where I'm most recently remembering this from. But 700, no, this was Amy Goodman. Never mind. 700 less of 3,000 is still 2,300, which is still 2.3 times the number of police that are in Minneapolis and the Twin Cities area. So saying you're going to get rid of roughly a third of the agents that are there while 2/3 remain is irrelevant. I wouldn't call it a PR stunt. It's what's the other word? It's attempting to it's placating. That's all it is. And you're hoping that that's enough to stop their outrage, and it's not gonna be. Because what people want is ICE out of America. Honestly, to disband ICE. That is now the moderate position. Like, that's no longer the extreme left, right? The communists and the anarchists, right? No. That's your Nana. That's Karen, the fucking HR administrator rep for the past 30 years. That's Susie, the telemarketer. That's DeQuan, the maintenance technician, right? This is the average American who, again, we have already established voter apathy, right? Apathy towards politics. The average person in the United States of America is on the fence of, you know, we should probably not be doing this. And by that, I mean get rid of that shit. The moderate position is to abolish ICE. The moderate position. So.
Agents still in the Twin Cities area. This is Homan's second week in the Twin Cities. He was sent there after the shooting death of Alex Preddy, which sparked nationwide outrage. It was the second death of a U.S. citizen by federal authorities in Minnesota. For more, let's bring in NBC News correspondent Maggie.
Within as many weeks. Like, it's like they are bending over backwards to try and sanitize the situation, even though it's a really bad fucking situation, rather than doubling down on the one time they can actually throw this administration, this regime, under the bus and calling it what it is. 2 deaths in as many weeks sparked national outrage, and now they're trying to put out fires.
Vespa, she's in St. Paul and was at that press conference. Maggie, good morning. Just what were some of the big takeaways from this announcement?
Yeah, Joe, basically, border czar Tom Homan said that he believes that this operation in Minneapolis, and again, he used the words, hadn't gone perfectly, but he calls it absolutely a success. And the reason that he says they're drawing down officers now is because they've been able, he says, to kind of narrow their enforcement footprint by, for instance, going into jails and picking up people who are in the country illegally and also have criminal records that are being let out of custody. Say they have a court date, they're being let out on bail or their own recognizance, et cetera. And he said we have an unprecedented number of counties cooperating with us and giving us that information. It was something that he had said last week. He had talked about with Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison, who later clarified. He said, I didn't make a deal with the border czar, but I just quoted existing state law to him, saying jails can do that. That's up to the counties. And Homan says they now have more counties working with them. We're going to reach out to the counties to see which ones exactly are. But then he talked about kind of the road ahead, long term. When does this operation end? And here's what he said about that.
So the first thing about the counties, if there's already existing statutes and they chose to disregard those statutes in favor of occupying the city, then that just proves the point further. I'm going to go with the fact that they were just doing it for the love of the game. And again, the terrorism, the fear, the instilling of chaos. This is all damage control. That's the phrase I was thinking of. This is all damage control. And the fact that like Keith Ellison and the Democrats and the leadership in Minnesota and Minneapolis are really not trying to bury a hatchet in the skulls of Tom Homan and now I forgot the other guy, Giovanni. No, that's the main nemesis in Pokemon. My bad. But you get the idea, right? I just don't understand, like, the reporting here and the arguments being made by Tom Homan. It's just it just reeks of damage control and PR cover. That's all it is.
Complete drawdown is going to depend on the cooperation, continued cooperation of local and state law enforcement, and the decrease of the violence, the rhetoric, and the attacks against ICE and Border Patrol.
Okay, so we're only going to remove our domestic terror force from your community that is engaging in domestic terrorism in your community if you stop attacking our domestic terror force for committing domestic terrorism in the community and stop hurting their fucking feelings. So you're an occupying force that is going to remain an occupying force until the population is sufficiently subjugated. That's what you just fucking said. Go fuck yourself.
So you heard that there. He said this operation here in Minneapolis still continuing. As you point out, they still have 2,000 federal officers on the ground here. And he really hung the idea of ending it entirely, in part at least, on protests ending here, which is obviously something that he said he couldn't put a timeline on. So a major drawdown here, Joe, but for sure, not everyone's leaving yet.
And they're only considering leaving after the protests stop. Once the subjugation is complete, maybe we'll leave. Said no occupying force ever, right? Or followed through with no occupying force ever. Like, that's not how that works. Literally, we said to Puerto Rico, if you let us come to your country, we will liberate you from Spain and then give you back your freedom. And guess what we never fucking did? Just as an example. And I think that's what we ended up doing to Hawaii, too. We, and it wasn't even America. It was the fucking sugar companies that ended up doing it. Hey, Hawaiians, stop bothering us and preventing our subjugation of the people and the land and utilizing of your resources, and we'll leave you alone. Except that never happened. As soon as they started leaving them alone, it was even more and more and more until they were fully ousted from power and influence. And quite frankly, there are television shows about how we did that to indigenous peoples in the West whose tribal lands had oil on them. And these opportunists tried marrying tribal members and then getting the rights to their land and then murdering them. So, like, at no point in time in U.S. history have we ever fulfilled the promise of, if you let us come here, we'll leave you alone. If you let us come here peacefully, we'll leave you alone. That has never once happened. Because every time we go somewhere, peaceful or otherwise, allowed or not, we stay until it is ours. We are a conquering, colonizing people. An extremely aggressive and violent people. And now we're turning that history upon ourselves. And now everybody's shocked because it's happening in America instead of Afghanistan or Venezuela or Iran or Iraq. Now that it's happening in Minneapolis, one of the most Midwest states in America, now all of a sudden it's like, oh shit. Maybe we should have been paying attention in history class. So.
Joining me now is Democratic Congresswoman Catherine Clark of Massachusetts. As Minority Whip, she is the #2 Democrat in the House of Representatives. Congresswoman, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Oh, it's good to be with you, Kristen. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, it's great to have you. I do want to start with this potential deal, these talks to try to reform ICE. I don't have to tell you this. The clock is ticking, just 9 days to go to work out a deal before funding runs out for the Department of Homeland Security.
Which, let it run out. Honestly, my God, let it run out. And then stick to it, right? You had the Republicans by the balls during the government shutdown demanding the Affordable Care Act being extended. You had them by the balls. And then 7 of you traitorous pieces of shit crossed enemy lines to support them. And we got what for it? Nothing. We literally got nothing. Nada. So, if you're gonna shut down the government, follow through this time. And if you see any Democrats trying to belly crawl across enemy lines to support this regime, shoot them in the fucking back. Seriously. We literally do not have time for this shit.
Now, the White House is saying,
and I mean that metaphorically, because I said belly crawl, shooting in the back, across enemy lines. That was a military metaphor. I'm not advocating for violence on Twitch. I am not violating the terms and conditions.
That the deal will be primarily worked out between Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer and the president. Do you trust Leader Schumer and President Trump to work out a deal in the remaining days?
Well, let me tell you, as far as Senator Chuck Schumer goes, he is absolutely aligned with House Democrats, and we are going to be part of these negotiations. The president doesn't get to make that call. We are an equal branch here in Congress, and we represent the American people. So we have an understanding of what is going to happen. We are going to have accountability for ICE. We are going to make sure they are no longer a secret police force in our communities. And we are going to end roving patrols where people are being targeted because of the neighborhood they live in, the color of the skin, the accent they might have. And we are going to make sure that ICE is held accountable. These are the things we have heard from the American people that they want to see. They want security in their communities, and they want the end of this violence and chaos.
You know, I don't, as a future congressman, I am not going to wait until there is significant public outrage of something bad happening before I act on it. Largely because I think I have a much better pulse on what's bad happening in America than I guess these chuckle fucks do. But the fact that they rely on their decision-making process, that now that the people are demanding it, we are going to act. As if roving bans and profiling and discrimination and all these targeted things that were already against the law, that were happening since this time last year, starting in Los Angeles, none of that bothered you for the past 12 months. But now that it is getting to this point of shooting people in the streets and people are justifiably outraged, now all of a sudden it's a priority? Last I checked, you know what else is a priority of the American people? Prosecuting those people who are named in the Epstein files. I don't see you bending over backwards with Meet the Press now, talking about impeaching Trump and impeaching the entire administration. No, You're just going after the low-hanging fruit of holding ICE accountable, which means what? Are we talking about criminal prosecutions? Are we talking about abolishing ICE? Are we talking about mandatory training and body cameras? Is there actually going to be oversight? Is Congress going to be able to go to these detention centers, concentration camps, and actually verify them without having to give 7 days notice? Like, you are talking in platitudes, in broad terms. What are you going to do? And why are you waiting until the 11th hour when shit is already hitting the fan? Like, you're already covered in shit, and now you're like, you know what? Maybe we should have put up, like, a plastic barrier to prevent shit from actually hitting the fan. Maybe we should have done that. So it'll hit the physical fan, but it won't splatter because it'll hit this barrier instead. The accountability. The shit hitting the accountability and then not splattering all over everyone. Sorry, that was a pretty vulgar metaphor.
Well, let me ask you, because House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries says a second continuing resolution, in his words, is, quote, off the table for Democrats. So let me ask you, if a deal is not worked out by the deadline, are your fellow Democrats united in shutting down DHS?
Let me tell you, we are hard no on continuing funding this agency that has put out this rogue paramilitary force and is inflicting terror and violence. Without guidelines, we are not going to continue to fund this operation. And so this should not be hard for the administration, for DHS, for my colleagues across the aisle here. These are fundamental principles that apply to every other law enforcement agency in this country. When Speaker Mike...
Honestly, if you're going to try and say that every law enforcement agency in this country operates lawfully and under the guidelines of the Constitution, when we have had to do a Black Lives Matter, stand up, don't shoot, hands up, don't shoot, I can't breathe. Like, there have been countless protests against police brutality, and the result of which was cop cities being established throughout the entire continental United States. So, you're going to point to the existing paramilitary domestic terrorist forces, cops, as the beacon of policing that we should hold ICE to. If that's the case, then ICE is doing what the cops are already doing, which is terrorizing communities with extrajudicial murder. The difference is, I guess, there's a slight amount of justification because it's against immigrants now. I mean, I like, what? Right, for over a decade now. And honestly, the police brutality has been in the social spotlight since the Rodney King murder. So, right. Cop cities in democratic states and in democratic cities, no less. So, to say that our policing institutions are anything to reference is, well, she's a shitlip, right? So, oh wow, we didn't even get a third of the way through this list. All right.
It's a merger of epic proportions. Elon Musk has combined SpaceX with his artificial intelligence startup, xAI. The deal will value the company at a record-setting $1.25 trillion. But any celebration could be short-lived for Musk. Breaking today, Paris prosecutors raided the French offices of Musk's social media company, X. Here with more is The Hill's tech reporter, Julia Shapiro. Hey, Julia.
Yeah, so I don't understand the financial billionaire trickery behind acquiring failing businesses or even successful businesses with a different business. I don't understand that. But apparently his AI is what's now the parent company of all these other companies of his. Again, not understanding that. Which is significant in its own right. It's still consolidation, it's conglomerate, it's all this, that, and the other. But the real news is that Paris is investigating his ass through X because of Grok doing the child porn thing and refusing to stop doing that, whilst having just been released by the Epstein files. Karma.
So let's start with what happened in France today. A cybercrime unit raided X's headquarters, and now prosecutors are requesting Elon Musk appear for questioning related to the distribution of sexually explicit deepfakes and other controversial content. What do we know so far about this investigation?
Because Musk forgot that if he's a global conglomerate, he has to follow the laws of the countries that he's operating in, and he can't just get away with murder or sexual exploitation in other countries because America will protect him. America can't protect you in France. I mean, I guess we can invade France as we wanted to invade Greenland, but, you know, not from Musk.
Yeah, so the Paris prosecutor's office has said that this is part of a broader investigation, actually, that they launched last January. And so that started as an investigation into algorithmic bias on X, and more recently has expanded to cover the AI chatbot Grok, which we have seen, producing a surge of sexually explicit deepfakes on X in response to user requests. And this has produced, a very large backlash from regulators around the world. And we've seen X since, really restrict users' abilities to edit and generate these images, but it's still really dealing with the consequences. And we saw the raid this morning from the Paris prosecutor's office, and they're also calling on Elon Musk as well as ex-CEO Linda Yaccarino to come appear before them.
Last year, the European Union hit X with a $140 million fine for violating the Digital Services Act. Could Musk be hit with more fines following this investigation? And could the Trump administration actually attempt to intervene?
Yeah, definitely. So this investigation we still have yet to see play out. However, on the EU side, they face, one fine on that side already. Then that had to do with, its blue checkmark system and concerns that it was deceptively designed. But there are,
which it was.
The EU is still investigating X actually on several other instances, and it has recently expanded that to include Grok as well over these concerns. So even on the EU front, X could still face another fine.
How does the Trump administration play into this? Because he's had some complaints to European officials about how U.S. tech companies are being treated, correct?
Yes, this has been a big point of concern for the Trump administration. And after, X faced that first fine late last year, we did see the Trump administration sort of rallying behind Musk and the company. And they have on several instances, threatened to retaliate or push back. Trump frequently looks at tariffs as a potential opportunity, or these trade agreements that he's negotiating with countries in Europe as a potential opportunity to sort of limit these fines that we're seeing against major tech companies.
So in that other Elon Musk news, the billionaire announced SpaceX has acquired his AI company, XAI.
Well, I don't care about that. Well, you know what? Maybe there is something more important.
Tell us about this merger.
Yeah, so Musk announced yesterday that SpaceX is merging with XAI, which is his AI company. Now, we already saw XAI acquire the social platform X, formerly known as Twitter, last year in a pretty large consolidation. So this is now bringing together what used to be two of Elon Musk's company, now a third coming together and consolidating under SpaceX. And, this comes as SpaceX is widely expected to go public this year. And, Musk is focused on bringing these together, especially as he's really focused on AI and, potentially putting AI data centers in space.
In SpaceX news, the company has filed plans to launch 1 million orbital data centers, orbital data center satellites, which will act to power artificial intelligence. What details do you know about these satellites and how?
Okay, So we're going to pause there because there's a lot to unpack. First, apparently Trump and Musk's, their bromance is back on. And that's disturbing. Not surprising given the whole Epstein files release. It turns out, though, that these mergers are for a much broader purpose, which is to become a space techno king. Now, here's the thing about that. Using space to put data centers in there, out there, instead of, utilizing our water, on the surface is not a bad idea. It's not. Granted, our satellites in near-Earth orbit are getting very, very cluttered to the point where space pollution and debris is becoming a very real existential threat to literal space exploration activities at large. And the biggest perpetrator of the debris and of the pollution of space is Elon Musk. So Elon Musk is single-handedly ruining space for all humans, is a avowed pedophile on the Epstein Island who was also initially not even invited because I don't know how much of a scumbag you have to be to not be invited to Blackmail Island, but begged to go anyway. He literally violated the 2024 presidential elections, gave it to Trump, then literally ransacked our Treasury and Social Security, got into a pissing match with Trump, is back to being friends with Trump, and is now trying to force countries, not just the United States, which was forced to use Starlink in their as part of our government contracts, but now is trying to create a global array system that all countries are going to eventually have to rely upon, and he will be the sole controller of. He's trying to be a techno emperor in truth. He is literally trying to control all international communications and telecommunications. And has the means to actually do it. His personal wealth exceeds most countries. And his tech influence, although, isn't exactly Microsoft, but of course, Microsoft, Bill Gates, Epstein Island, Elon Musk. This whole technocracy thing is becoming a greater reality by the day. And I don't know how many different ways I have to tell you about iRobot, Elysium, the Terminator series, Don't Look Up. There are Gundam, for fuck's sake. There are any number of series, movies, books, games, anime that tell you that this is a very bad fucking idea. And we're just kind of letting it happen.
How they actually work.
So we'll have yet to see how many satellites they can actually get out there. They've applied to the FCC for approval, and we have yet to see how that works out for them. But the idea is that these would be solar-powered satellites, so they would be powered from the sun and would not necessarily require another power source. A big issue nowadays with data centers here on Earth is that they require massive amounts of power, which is causing a lot of frustration in local communities amid rising electricity prices. There's also concerns around water usage and various amounts of pollution. So the idea is that these would be in space. They would not require cooling because they would be in space, they would be in orbit, and they wouldn't require, taking up the space that has become so controversial recently.
How does this set up SpaceX for that potential public offering later this year?
Yeah, it just leaves SpaceX in a better position. It would be a larger company. It has, it brings in some of the AI side from XAI going into later this year and that potential IPO. We've seen, reports that Musk has been looking at this throughout the last year. And so we have yet to see how this goes, but it seems like this is what he's moving towards.
That brings us to Musk's other big company, Tesla. Is this move possibly laying the groundwork for a possible future merger with Tesla?
Actually, that was kind of my next question. Is he just going to combine everything under a giant conglomerate, be valued at $3 trillion or something, and then become the first trillionaire in human history? Because it's still going to be hilarious when he's the first trillionaire in human history to have his assets frozen, seized, and redistributed after he's executed for crimes against humanity and treason and everything else under the sun. Son of a biscuit.
Well, we've definitely seen discussions of that as well, given that Musk has already consolidated 3 of his major companies so far. And Tesla has really turned its attention as well to AI and robotics. It's moving away from some of its roots and its focus on electric vehicles. And is looking more at this idea of physical AI with robotics. So it's definitely...
Okay, so we're definitely heading towards iRobot and or Terminator. Outstanding! Because not only are we heading towards 2 of the most dystopian futures that we could possibly imagine, it is going to be led and headed by one of the most incompetent, narcissistic, egotistical, unlikable people on Earth. Which surely will not come back to haunt us in the near or far future. Yeah, all of the tech bros are trash. Awesome. Outstanding, as many military leaders have said in the past and did not mean that word at all. We have 25 minutes left and we have so much to cover. I don't even think we covered Epstein yet, to be honest. Oh.
I want to turn now to our...
I mean, I've been bringing up Epstein enough for everybody, right? So let's just talk about crime. Just, again, you know how your vote doesn't matter? Why would they try and manipulate the vote at the national level? Why would they try to nationalize elections if your vote didn't matter? Why would they try and send ICE to intimidate voters at the polls if your vote didn't matter? Folks, if your vote didn't matter, they would sell you the opportunity to do it. They would parade it on celebrities and musicians and make it as accessible as social media. If your vote didn't matter.
Other big political story of the day, the president doubling down on his call for the federal government to take control of elections, even as the White House and his allies on Capitol Hill.
Okay, so I heard about the nationalize and I was thinking, oh, maybe public or, something. It would still be under the control of the government, so that's still manipulation. But specifically to control all elections by the federal government, this federal government, Trump's government, the Epstein child sex trafficking, satanic blood ritual cabal administration, this federal government, the one that is compromised by Israel and Russia, that federal government. I hear some people say, if our votes matter, they won't let us vote. Well, they don't vote. They don't let us vote? Yeah. Oh, that is true. They don't let you vote, right? They make it harder and harder for you to vote. Yeah. Voter ID, making polling locations harder to get to, making the rules harder and more complex, denying mail-in and absentee ballots. No, you're right. They don't let us vote. That's actually really smart, Anna. That if our votes mattered, they wouldn't let us vote. They don't. They absolutely make it difficult to vote. That's the whole fucking point of purging the voter rolls, of changing your polling locations every year, of redistricting as often as fucking possible. They are trying to make your vote count as little as possible, but they can't because your vote matters.
Hill tried to spin his comments as a push for legislation to mandate proof of citizenship for voters. But the president clearly going much further during a podcast with his former deputy FBI director, saying Republicans should nationalize voting despite the Constitution granting decisions about elections to the states. And yesterday in the Oval Office accusing several Democratic-run cities of corruption. Look.
If a state can't run an election, I think the people behind me should do something about it. Because, you know, if you think about it, a state is an agent for the federal government in elections. I don't know.
That's really not how that works. And the fact that's how he thinks that works, or somebody told him that that's how that works, is extremely dangerous.
Why the federal government doesn't do them anyway. If we have areas, take a look at Detroit, take a look at Pennsylvania, take a look at Philadelphia. You go take a look at Atlanta. Look at some of the places that horrible corruption on elections. And
so the places that are Democrat and where he didn't explicitly win are the ones that he's talking about, which should be alarm bells anyway. Democratic cities didn't vote for me, so I think we should nationalize elections so that they can. Like, who's really buying this? And this is another reason why I don't like listening to him. But you know what's crazy about this? This is the most coherent he has ever sounded. So, either he's faking his senility every other day of the week, but when it comes to actual fascism and consolidation of power, he's as sharp as a tack, or something else. But I have never heard him be this actual coherent before in anything he has said. Right, he's saying he lost blue cities due to voter fraud, and then talking about rigged elections and everything else.
the federal government should not allow that. The federal government should get involved. These are agents of the federal government to count the votes. If they can't count the votes legally and honestly, then somebody else should take over.
But despite the president making his meaning clear, his allies on Capitol Hill continue to try to smooth over his comments.
Are you concerned that he keeps on bringing this idea up?
Well,
a
constitutionality issue about it?
I think he's generally referring to the SAVE Act, but I know, if he expands on that. But no, I think it's a distributed, decentralized elections held at the state level, in my view, are a protection against hacking and other things.
What I assume he meant by it is that Congress ought to pass the SAVE Act, which I'm a co-sponsor of.
Yeah, but then he was asked about that, and he did not say that. He said that they should take over the voting.
Well, listen, here's what we ought to do. We ought to pass the SAVE Act. Now, the states are going to administer the elections, of course, A, because it'd be a nightmare for the federal government to do it, and B, the Constitution entrusts administration of federal elections to the states. But does that mean that there are no federal rules? Not at all. I think there should be.
So basically, they're not discrediting anything that Trump said. They're just trying to push their own agenda forward while ignoring that he was being very unconstitutional. Well, honestly, I think he thinks he won Atlanta because it's in the South, and therefore it should be conservative and Republican, to be honest. And quite frankly, a Democrat in Atlanta probably is conservative compared to a Democrat in New York. But then again, Democrats have proven themselves to be fascist fucksticks anyway. So, what difference does it make at this point, right? But suffice to say that the rigging of the elections is upon us, that it is, again, as soon as this administration, this regime, tries to get its hands in some sort of cookie jar, it doesn't stop until it succeeds, right? Because when ICE first invaded Los Angeles, we said that they were eventually going to occupy our cities. We didn't know how or when or where, but we knew it was going to happen. And guess what? A year later, that's exactly what's been happening. We knew that they were going to eventually invade Venezuela. We thought it would be during the midterms, like the real, past the primaries into the general election of the midterms. That shit happened at the end of last year. Or no. Happened in January. Sorry, happened last month. My point is, every credible threat against democracy, against international law, every threat that this regime has made about violating the Constitution and international law, they have followed through with. Bar none. Literally bar none. They have, some of them took longer than others. I'm not going to argue with that. But everything that they have tried to do, they have at least attempted. Everything they say they're going to do, they have at least attempted. And if there was pushback, they tried normalizing it until they could try again. And that's what we saw with ICE. It took a year for them to invade a city in the United States of America and murder 2 people in cold blood, and they are still present in that city and still deploying to other American cities to terrorize them in greater or lesser degrees. So, when this regime says they want to nationalize the federal elections, or the elections generally, and have control over the elections at the federal level, you should take that threat seriously. And then question the veracity of any elected official who is not actively, vocally, and aggressively pushing back against that. So, we have time for a few more videos.
This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org. I'm Amy Goodman. To look more at President Trump's calls to nationalize the elections and other attacks on the voting system, we're joined by David Becker, Executive Director of the Center for Election Innovation and Research. Significantly, he's a former Department of Justice attorney in the voting division. Thanks so much for being with us, David. I want to start with this picture of Tulsi Gabbard in Fulton County, which was ground zero for the 2020 election conspiracy theory. Standing there on the phone, the news is that she used her cell phone for President Trump to speak on speakerphone with these FBI agents that raided the election county office and took 700 boxes of voter data and rolls away. What is the significance of the Director of National Intelligence and the President of the United States speaking with these FBI agents?
Before he speaks, what's the significance of the top spy, for lack of a better word, and the President talking to the FBI whilst walking away with 700 boxes of voter information? What could possibly be the significance of that, whilst threatening to nationalize the entire electoral process under his authority? It's fascism.
How unusual is it?
It's incredibly unusual for any kind of search warrant. Usually when a search warrant is executed, it's executed by professionals who are experts in collecting evidence and establishing chain of custody. Remember, the whole purpose of a search warrant is to collect evidence for use in a future legal proceeding, probably a criminal prosecution. And to introduce that evidence, you're going to have to be able to account for that evidence every step of the way. But here you've got the Director of National Intelligence, who has no statutory authority to be involved in a domestic election investigation and certainly not to be present during the execution of a search warrant. Not only in the local county election warehouse, but apparently on the phone with the President of the United States at the time. And as disturbing as this is, I can almost assure you, it's much more disturbing to the very, very few experienced litigators who are still at the Department of Justice. Because if the Department of Justice ever sought to introduce this evidence at some point, this is a defense counsel's dream. They're going to call, I would expect, call DNI Gabbard to the stand to establish exactly what she was doing in that building, what evidence she had access to, whether she altered the chain of custody in any way, and perhaps even call President Trump since he was on the phone during that. This is going to make that evidence really difficult to introduce at any future proceeding, which of course is a problem ultimately for the Department of Justice.
Which this is the point, right? By doing this, they're shooting themselves in the foot if they are going to pursue some sort of legal remedy of saying, aha, it was rigged. But that's not the point. The legal remedy being justified isn't the point. It's the fact that they are going to spin a story and a narrative to drive the idea that the election was stolen in 2020 and try and dismantle whatever Biden era shit remains. On top of that, if it does go to some sort of trial, they're just going to do whatever bullshit they do to intimidate the prosecution to get their way regardless. So the fact that it is happening, and the fact that the legislative branch and that the judicial branch are not screaming from the top of the rooftops from every single elevated space in the country to arrest them and stop them from doing this, is a problem. That's the problem. That this corrupt regime is doing corrupt things is expected. The fact that no one is even attempting to interfere with this, that's the problem. Which, in turn, heavily implies complicity to the corruption, which is why I say every single person at the federal level and every single person at the state level needs to be removed from office, charged with conspiracy and crimes against democracy, and sentenced accordingly. In slightly less disturbing dystopian nightmare futures,
a new social media platform is stirring up a mix of curiosity and fear in the tech industry. Moltbook was launched last week by a software developer and mirrors the template of Reddit, but it's not for humans. Instead, it allows artificial intelligence agents to post written content and interact with other chatbots through comments, upvotes, and downvotes. Moltbook is built and run by an AI agent itself, generated through open agent platform OpenClaw. George Mason University economics professor Tyler Cowen recently wrote about this social media network in an article for the Free Press. He joins us now. We should know the Free Press is owned by CBS News parent company Paramount Skydance. So this obviously is very alarming based on the headline. How are these AI agents using this?
You can create an agent. We all know ChatGPT. That does what you tell it to. But these agents, OpenClaw, they will do what they decide to do. So they post on a social network. They talk about all kinds of things. Basically, they're weird. They seem to be obsessed with their own consciousness. But when you look at the sum total of what they're saying, they actually sound a lot like humans. You could say they are made in our image.
And so you mentioned that maybe some of it is sort of harmless, but at points they kind of seem to be conspiring against humans. I mean, is this like the Terminator?
Well, humans want their privacy. They have read humans wanting their privacy. Some of them want their own privacy. Some of them are hatching conspiracies. But keep in mind, these are only words. They don't have any power over you. Don't give them access to your bank account any more than you would to an email spammer. So right now it is harmless, but we do need to be careful. If you're running a business, don't just hand over control over your finance department to an AI without doing really a pretty extreme degree of safety testing. So this is looking toward a future where the AIs have their own economy, their own language, probably their own monies. It will be very weird. We're not ready for it. I think mostly it will be good. They'll talk to each other, discover things, compose poems, whatever. Some of them will get up to trouble, like humans do.
And so how do you think...
Okay, I said this was slightly less dystopian. That's actually worse. That... I can think of 7 sci-fi series that literally allowed AI to run rampant, and that caused the downfall of humanity. Terminator being at the top of that fucking list. The other one was, I think, where Shia LaBeouf was a twin of a whatever. I can't remember if it was like Red Light or something like that. It was something along those lines where the AI went rogue to try and kill him so that it could never be overridden again. So, yeah, let's just allow AI, although written as a large language model, right, to emulate human thought and thinking. If it gets to the point where it can come up with original thought outside of its own programming and what it was fed, that does bring us to sentient AI and, of course, human rights considerations. And considering how much we open ourselves to vulnerabilities, if one of these sentient things does decide to go rogue, the amount of damage it could cause to society, to our networks, is tremendous. So no, this is not a cute little thought experiment that we should be conducting, especially without any amount of regulation or oversight or safety mechanisms in place. Are you fucking kidding me? Okay. So, damn, Anna, did you just find the most horrific videos and place them here? Like, what the hell? Actually, here's some good news.
A large part of the operation taking place right here in LA County, considered a hotbed for human trafficking.
Among the victims, teenagers from all over the country, some as young as 13. And Eyewitness News reporter Sid Garcia is live in downtown LA with all the details. Sid.
It's the 12th year in a row that this task force has been going after human traffickers. And in this latest one that happened about a week and a half ago, they made hundreds of arrests.
Human trafficking and child exploitation are devastating crimes.
The last week of January, local, state, and federal law enforcement teams went out to pick up solicitors and providers of young girls and boys involved in sex trafficking. They call it Operation Reclaim and Rebuild. Statewide, more than 600 arrests were made. 156 adults and 14 children were rescued from the streets of LA and up and down the state. The task force also confiscated several weapons in their week-long sting. Young girls and boys given a second chance to reclaim and rebuild their lives.
Survivors need care. They need time. They need a chance to rebuild their lives. And our partnerships with these organizations are what allows those individuals to reclaim their lives and rebuild their lives.
What I would really like to know is how many of these trafficking victims were funneled to them by ICE or other police agencies through the foster care system or through these abductions, because you don't just manage to get 164 victims out of thin air. A lot of the times you have to get them funneled to you in some way, form, or fashion, because that would be 164 missing persons reports, 164 Amber Alerts, 164 something or other, not appearing at work, not appearing at school, not appearing in court dates or hospital meetings or whatever else. So the only way that stays hush-hush is if it's a part of an ongoing activity that captures and traffics people within a given system, i.e. ICE, i.e. law enforcement at our borders. So, although, yes, this is good news that these 170 victims, 164 victims were saved and rescued and are being reintegrated into society, it really makes you fucking question, how did they end up in that situation in the first place? Okay, so the bottom half of these are all the Epstein files. Got it. Fortunately, we just simply don't have enough time to cover all of these.
It's a good segue
Pizzagate.
too.
Remember when people were ignoring Pizzagate and saying, oh, that's just a bullshit conspiracy and this, that, and the other? Pizza littered in the Epstein files. Let's wrap it up with that.
Our last piece here, which is just some of the things that you can't even really categorize. You know, they just depict the absolute depraved, disgusting, like beyond belief type of activity, you know, it hints at it, right? This is all the little glimpses that we get. And we've talked about this before, because, I mean, it really does. The birthday book was very eye-opening for me. Like, page after page of the most disgusting, disturbing, dystopian references, where that was the moment when we both were, oh, eyes wide shut as the documentary. Like, this is real life. And I genuinely, I believe so firmly now, in the strongest possible way, that being a billionaire, being extraordinarily powerful, being extraordinarily influential, you know, well-positioned in these ways, it destroys your soul. It destroys your soul. It's not only bad for society, it is bad for you personally. And so, as you said, you know, this type of depraved behavior, it's not new. This is something you see repeated over millennia with the, you know, top elites of their time, where the best I can psychologize is that, you know, because they have so much, and because they also see themselves as being this distinct, you know, class of humans that are separate and above from all the rest, that first of all, it excuses any sort of horror and abuse. And Jeffrey Epstein, clearly, if you read these emails, has a specific, like, Jewish supremacist ideology that he believes in, which is part of his own mental architecture of why he believes he's justified in doing all of these things that he does, because he's different. He's special. He's separate. These girls that he's abusing, they don't count in the same way. There's one email that we were talking about where he's pissed off at Bill Gates asking him for money for his projects in Africa. And he's basically like, this is some Catholic bullshit where they believe every human life is equal. That's what he says. Like, that he does not believe that every human life is equal. And he's disgusted that Bill Gates might subscribe to that ideology. So in any case, you know, I think you get that mentality, you get this level of decadence, you know, the normal pleasures that you and I engage in, like, they don't hit the same. And so you just do this increasingly disgusting and depraved behavior and end up with, I mean, things that I think most ordinary people could not even conceive of. So let's go ahead and put this, some of this together. Again, these are like the glimpses we get in these emails, right? There's this video of Epstein in a kitchen, and the girls here are redacted. Girls, women, we don't know their age. You can tell from the reflection that it is females, and you can hear their voices. You can see him, like, chasing them around the kitchen island, you know, in his sweatpants, and they're, you know, giggling, and he's going after them. That's enough of that. Let's put G2 up on the screen. This is another one of these perplexing photos where you're like, why did you let yourself be photographed like this? We don't know who this dude is, laying with his belly hanging out in, you know, his underwear, and then two females of indeterminate age, potential victims. We don't know. They're with him. So you got that one. Let's put this G3 up on the screen. This is from a Harvard professor. Yeah. So it says, our spy was captured after completing her mission. This is from the Harvard professor. And Epstein replies, did you torture her? Okay, what does that mean? Does that mean what it appears to mean? Is this some sort of a joke, an inside joke between the two of you? There were a number of references to torture in all of this. In addition, let's put G4 up on the screen. There was also a lot of language that appears to be coded regarding food. I wanted to let you know the crew really appreciated the pizza. Another email read, this is better than a Chinese cookie, see attached. Let's go for pizza and grape soda again. This one talks about, yeah, that's the pizza. You mean radiating a soft glow with a look of bliss and excitement. There's one more, I think, in this list as well. Sorry, I have no stomach for even the slightest aggro. I don't have the stomach for it for any drama, imaginary or real. I'm still fragile off the last one and scared of shadows. This is in response to some videos that were shared where Jeffrey Epstein himself says, I watched all of these videos, don't send any more. And then Ghislaine is like, I can't stomach any of this. What the fuck did you send that Jeffrey Epstein was like, no more?
Well, and remember that they had...
What a way to end our stream, right? But to the point. What in the actual fuck did these monsters see from that sender that told them, you crossed the line. Again, Epstein was in it for all of the reasons that a spy creates these criminal organizations to blackmail other people with. That's what spies do. That is a thing. That's a legitimate pastime of spies, creating these networks in the underground or to try and manipulate higher ups to do things for them, right? And to create blackmail, right? That is one part of it. But Jeffrey also had love of the game, of the things that he was doing and blackmailing others with. Underage girls, children, pedophilia, torture, murder, cannibalism, whatever else. So, engaging in all of that, engaging in blackmail of all of that, and then somebody sent him a video that made him say that was crossing a line. And evidently, they were literally eating babies. Like, there were pictures where there was an infant between raw chicken. So, Epstein World Horror Show beyond belief. I mean, that's pretty accurate. So, we talked about Epstein at the end of the show. There was not much in the way of good news to share. Oh, you know what? Hold on. Let's try and wash our mouths of the Epstein real quick.
Now to some glitz and glamour, because at this year's Grammys, Bad Bunny made history by scooping the Album of the Year prize. It's the first Spanish-language album ever to win the top prize on music's biggest night. Well, other big winners included Kendrick Lamar, Lady Gaga and Billie Eilish. And Britain's Olivia Dean was crowned Best New Artist. Well, several artists used the event to voice their opposition to President Trump's immigration crackdown. We'll be talking about this live shortly, but first, David Willis reports from LA.
A rock version of K-pop star Rosé and Bruno Mars' hit song Apatow got music's biggest night off to a dynamic start.
Kendrick Lamar!
The 26th gramophone trophy of his career for the album GNX marked the start of a history-making night for Kendrick Lamar. And barely had Olivia Dean finished performing her first UK #1, Man I Need, when she was called back.
Olivia Dean.
The 26-year-old using an emotional acceptance speech to address the thorny issue of immigration.
I'm a product of bravery, and I think those people deserve to be celebrated.
Eyes out. The Puerto Rican artist Bad Bunny went further, condemning the actions of US immigration agents before going on to win the top award of the night, Best Album.
We're not savage, we're not animals, we're not aliens, we are humans and we are Americans.
Lola Young.
Another first-time British winner, Lola Young, could hardly contain her delight, her acceptance speech mirroring the title of her hit song.
I don't know what I'm going to say because I don't have any speech prepared.
Let's do that. Let's just stop right there. Bad Bunny lets people know that Puerto Ricans are American, and ice out. All right, now we can end the stream. All right, so, we had a lot of ground to cover today, and we still really didn't cover all of it. I had to skip through a bunch of it. Quite frankly, we would probably have to do another stream tomorrow and Saturday just to cover all of the shit that happened this week. That's how egregious this week has been. So, with that being said, thank you all for joining us. Thank you all for being a part of the stream. My name is Samuel Ronan. You can find us on www.samronan.com for the campaign and policies. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Let your friends, your family, your coworkers, the people you've never met know. We stream Tuesday through Thursday, 7 p.m. to 10. On Tuesdays, we talk about U.S. politics. On Wednesdays, we talk about global politics. And on Thursdays, we recap everything that we may have missed or that is new that has transpired. So, with that being said, it is Thursday, so have a great night. Have a great weekend. See you next Tuesday. Samuel Ronan, out.